Ukrainian President Zelensky will make an historic address to the House of Commons today from besieged Kyiv.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 8th of March. You're watching Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn and Isabel.
We're live right across the whole world, bringing you the news that affects you. We're on TV, we're on radio, we're online, leading the news this morning.
President Zelensky will address MPs in the House of Commons today at 5 p.m. In a call with Liz Truss late last night, his foreign minister called for new sanctions on Russia.
The world is watching. The words of the Prime Minister ahead of his meeting with the leaders of the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland and Slovakia, as the government comes under increasing pressure to grant safety to fleeing Ukrainians.
Also coming up in the programme, the most comprehensive review of policing for a generation recommends a 5-year licence to practice review. That's for police officers. It comes off the back of a series of damaging scandals for the Met.
And it's International Women's Day, so please do get in touch and tell us about the women in your life who inspire you. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet @gbnews. In what's been called an historic move, Ukraine's President Zelensky will make a live video address to the House of Commons this afternoon about the ongoing crisis.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised the government will go as far as it can with sanctions ahead of meeting further world leaders.
Meanwhile, aid agencies are calling for a crucial need to protect women and girls who make up the majority of the 1.7 million people who have already fled and face increased risk of physical and sexual abuse.
Well, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, is in Chelm, near the Polish border, for us this morning. A very good morning to you again, Paul. On today, of course, International Women's Day, and a real emphasis on many of the women that you're seeing on that border today, many of whom incredibly vulnerable, fleeing war, and at risk of being exploited.
Yeah, absolutely. It is remarkable, Isabel. Just the numbers of women and children that arrive at the border, that come to refugee centres like the one where we're at in Helm this morning. Of course, the men, if you're aged 18 to 60, and unless you have a medical exemption, you are sent back into Ukraine. You get given a piece of paper at the border that you are allowed to, I think it's 24 hours you get with your family, then you have to go back into Ukraine to fight. We did meet a father yesterday who was allowed into the country. I think if you're a single parent, and then you are allowed to continue with your children. But most men, fathers, uncles, brothers, are sent back to fight in Ukraine, leaving the women to make the journey alone with their children. So, I mean, if you look around here at the Helm Centre, very difficult to see any men aged 18 to 60, lots of women with children here waiting to take some of the buses. There's 2 large coaches outside with German number plates heading for Germany, and then we've just been speaking actually over here, these chaps over here in the corner. They didn't want to talk to us because of their English, but they're heading to another part of Poland. They're here to collect 20 people, they say, today. And then through those doors, if you see, actually, let's just have a little wander around. If you come over here, this is the registration part. This is where people initially come to register, and then they can spend the night here at what is essentially a converted sports hall. Normally, in there would be people playing five-a-side football, basketball, etc. But through there, we're not going to go in there because, of course, we're respecting their dignity and reporting with sensitivity. People in there are on camp beds at the moment, so they're sleeping, space for about 300 or 400 people. To spend the night here if they need to. Some people actually are sleeping just around the corner here today. So perhaps they were full up last night. So we'll keep our distance, but those people are sleeping over there, and this is how people live when they arrive here for the first 24 hours at least. And then there's a shout from someone on a megaphone. There's a bus leaving. It's going to Sweden or Germany. There's 5 places on it. Do you want to go? You've got 5 minutes to make a decision, and then people jump on the bus and off they go.
Absolutely unbelievable scenes, Paul. Thank you so much for continuing to bring those stories to us, and we'll cross back to you a little bit later on in the programme. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So, Isabel, there's this fear. We're talking about 1.7 million refugees, and fears, as we know, most of those, practically all of them, are women and children. So women and young girls, there's a fear for their safety.
Yeah, so police and volunteers in Poland have been warning that as women are, as you described, coming across the border because men obviously been conscripted and told they have to stay and fight, many of them disorientated, very distressed, traumatised by what they've been through, being offered, a helping hand, or so they seem or they think, and actually many women unfortunately falling into the hands of gangs who are sex traffickers, and they're finding that there's this new threat. Not only are they fleeing war, but some of them are falling into the hands of people who will then force them to do things against their will, taken to despicable places. So it's a real worry.
Horror on top of everything these people are suffering.
Yeah.
So there's always somebody there ready to take advantage of a person in need. Really awful.
Yeah.
So for every good person, we've got to remember there are those vultures hanging about, waiting to do that. And particularly, we talk about this International Women's Day, and these are the sort of things that have to be respected and safeguarded as well.
Yeah.
Got a view on that? Let us know. Tweet at GBNews. Ukraine has accused Moscow of using medieval-style tactics as part of its invasion. Joining us now, Colonel Richard Kemp, former chairman of Cobra and British Army commander in Afghanistan. Colonel, we were just talking there about the safety of a lot of women and this abnormal situation, and we're trying to apply regular rules and parameters, which is going to be very, very hard to do. I mean, you must have seen this in war. People there ready to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this, above all, in that aspect of it, reminds me of when the British Army operated in the Balkans during the 90s, the Balkans conflict there, which saw very large numbers of refugees. And numerous attempts by some people to exploit their suffering and gain benefit themselves from their suffering. And I'm pleased to say that on the occasions that they came to our attention, these issues, we were able to deal very effectively with it to protect the people who were fleeing. And again, it was largely women, children, and old people who were fleeing while the fathers and the brothers and the other men continued to fight. So a similar sort of scenario on a much smaller scale.
Yeah, and Colonel, reports of sort of fresh hell within Ukraine for civilians who are trying to go down these so-called humanitarian corridors, some littered with landmines, others having to climb over floodwaters. We're seeing pictures on the front of the papers this morning. Absolutely awful conditions for the civilians, and not being honoured, these ceasefires, not being honoured by the Russians.
Yeah, I think there's probably a combination there of a number of factors, and that would include ill-disciplined troops firing at people who are supposed to be protected and able to get away under a ceasefire. And unfortunately, you often get that sort of behaviour in a very large army like the Russian army, which is also full of conscripts. They're not kind of the professional soldiers that you'd find in the American army or Western European armies. And so that sort of thing happened. But also there'll be, I've no doubt there's an element of psychology involved here with President Putin, who, I suspect he hasn't probably given the orders to necessarily honour in every detail the ceasefires that have been agreed. He of course, his ultimate objective, his overriding objective, is to grind down the Ukrainian people and defeat both psychologically and military. Defeat them until the point where they come to terms with what he wants and agree to his orders.
It's fascinating listening to you and your take on that, because we'll all be looking and say 3 failed attempts at a ceasefire. Why can't they implement these humanitarian corridors? We're sort of asking for Marquess of Queensberry rules, and you're saying basically Putin doesn't care.
I would be very surprised if Putin cares about something like this. I doubt his mind is focused on it. And he, but above all, he recognises, and I think his original intention in Ukraine was to psychologically destroy the countries by the act of invasion, by invading, by firing a demonstration of force, by firing rockets and missiles. He hoped, I think, that would lead to the Ukrainian people simply giving up, the Ukrainian army giving up as well in the face of overwhelming might. Of course, that hasn't happened, but it's something he will always try and achieve. It's not wars are not just about exchange of shells and hardware. They're psychological as well. And undermining the morale of your enemy is a critical factor and a critical objective in war.
Colonel, there's been lots of talk, hasn't there, from the West anyway, about, whether or not Putin will be toppled from within Russia. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and again, this was pure speculation, but they'd heard a rumour, or there was some speculation that there was some sort of coup underway already in Russia, and that was why Putin had sent his officers and the military to the border and as far away from Moscow as possible. Now, be that as it may, we won't know if that's correct or not, but I just want to get your take on the two generals that he has lost in the last week. How big a loss is that? How surprising is it that he's sending senior military folk straight into Ukraine?
Well, he's got a very large army in Ukraine, and armies have to be led, and so it's absolutely right that generals will be present there in the country, leading their troops. And sometimes that does involve leading from the front and exposing yourself to danger. In the First World War, for example, I know it's not the same thing quite, but in the First World War, huge numbers of British generals were killed in action fighting on the Western Front against the Germans. So it's not unusual. I think as far as a coup is concerned, we should, I think, be quite cautious about that sort of rumour. No doubt we potentially are helping to spread that sort of rumour, and the Americans perhaps as well, and spreading, in the same way as Putin's trying to psychologically undermine the Ukrainians, we should be trying to psychologically undermine the Russians. And it should really be NATO's primary objective is to get rid of Putin. That's, Putin represents a permanent enemy for the West, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole of Western Europe and for the US, while he is in power. So his power needs to be ended, whether that's by him being killed or deposed in a coup is kind of almost neither here nor there. The most important thing is for him to go and get him out of the position where he can continually threaten us with not only his armed forces but also his nuclear weapons.
Colonel, you were talking earlier about conscript soldiers, part-timers, non-professional armies, and there's a lot of talk about UK veterans going out there to volunteer in Ukraine. What's your view on that?
Well, I have great admiration for anyone who would like to go out and defend Ukraine against the Russians. If I was younger and less fat myself, I'd probably be among them, or I hope I would. But I've been talking to a member of my regiment, the Royal Anglian Regiment, former member, who has been fighting in Mariupol against the Russians since this war began. And I've lost contact with him now. I'm not sure quite why, but of course Mariupol is under enormous pressure. But he served in the British Army. He's well trained, very experienced, an effective soldier. He's married to a Ukrainian woman in his case, and it was the natural and right thing for him to do. And I think he probably brought great capabilities to the part of the army he joined. And he told me recently that he was using British-supplied anti-tank missiles against the Russians. So I think, obviously, we're not prepared to send in our armed forces, but I think I wouldn't necessarily encourage somebody who hasn't got military training, but I do have admiration for people who have military training who want to use it to help a country under such horrendous circumstances as Ukraine finds itself.
Colonel, you said a moment ago NATO's #1 objective should be to get rid of Putin. How do you suggest they could do that in a way that wouldn't lead to World War III?
Well, I think we should be less frightened of leading to World War III, because I think if Putin carries on the way he's carrying on now, that's sort of almost a track to World War III itself. So I think preventing him from being able to do so is more likely to prevent World War III, I think, than trigger it. He's on his route now. But in terms of how we do it, I don't think it would be right for us to, let's say, assassinate Putin for, a Western intelligence service or whatever to assassinate Putin. I don't think that would be right. And the reason I say that is because it's often counterproductive if an outside army or outside country intervenes in the internal problems of another country. And what that often does is rally the country to support him. So while Putin has been losing, he's still very popular, I believe. But while he's been losing some support, I think, an assassination attempt, whether it succeeded or failed, or some other attempted coup led by the outside, I think is potentially would be counterproductive in terms of the support he has. But we should do everything we can to encourage those people inside Russia who are in a position to do so to bring him down. We should also be doing our best to support at one or more individuals who could replace him, who is more moderate and reasonable than he is.
Totally get all that you're saying, totally understand the logic of all that you're saying, but in reality, is there any difference or is there any bigger risk with taking out Putin as there was assassinating Osama bin Laden?
Well, I'm not sure it's a particularly a risk. I think there obviously are risks involved with everything. There was, people were saying at the time, when shortly after bin Laden was killed, that this is going to be a major problem for us because we're going to enrage the world of Islamic extremism and gain recruits for them. I don't think that actually did happen as a direct result of killing bin Laden. And it was the same when we killed the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in Iran when President Trump ordered that. Everyone was saying, or not everyone, a lot of people were saying, this is basically a declaration of war. It wasn't. It actually just undermined Iran, did a great deal of good for the world, which is suffering from Iranian violence. So people, a lot of people are fearful of positive action like this. But and of course, it does have its risks and its complications. But I think ultimately, the world and Russia as well would benefit from the downfall of Putin, whether it was, as I say, by his death or by his just being brought down and hopefully taken to The Hague to be tried for war crimes.
Colonel, fascinating talking to you. Thanks for your opinions and your analysis. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. That was Colonel Richard Kemp, and he's a former chairman of Cobra and former British Army commander in Afghanistan.
Thank you. Well, stay with us. We're going to be finding out after the break why one campaigner with Down syndrome is fighting for a change to abortion laws. We'll see you in a minute.
Good morning. Another chilly start out there. It will turn milder as we go through the next few days. A brisk wind, though, making it feel even colder, despite a fair bit of sunshine, certainly in the east. But further west, this weather front is slowly approaching, and that will increase the cloud and eventually bring some showers. For the time being, though, high pressure is still controlling things, and that will bring most places a dry, fine day. A touch of frost out there this morning, but plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, eastern England and most of Scotland. Across Wales, southwest England, Northern Ireland, we are seeing the clouds steadily increase, and here are a few showers just trickling into Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and across much of Northern Ireland during the afternoon. The breeze will be pretty noticeable, but it is slowly bringing milder air. So temperatures up to double figures across the Midlands and Wales, southwest England, 8 or 9 in Belfast, and only 8 or 9 in the eastern parts of England, despite a fair bit of sunshine. There will be that noticeable wind also. We'll see some of that rain edging across Scotland through this evening, so turning damp for a time, but it does tend to clear away before the next area of rain edges into Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the early hours. Temperatures won't be anything like as low as the night just gone. We're generally well above freezing thanks to more cloud and that brisk wind. It will make for a different feel, certainly on Wednesday morning. It won't feel anything like as cold, but again, for most of England and Wales, Wednesday's dry and bright. A wet day, though, for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. This line of rain, it's a weather front, it's just not moving very far. Some of that rain could be heavy as well. Eventually, it trickles into West Wales, southwest England. But for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, tomorrow is another dry day where we see some hazy sunshine. In the east, we could easily get into the teens. And temperatures ticking up further as we go through the week. We'll see some patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, but a lot of dry weather in the east, but often quite windy. As I said, those temperatures starting to tick up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Actually, there's a report in the paper today, if you're just waking up for breakfast.
We're hungry, just
we're hungry
FYI.
because we don't have breakfast. And there's nowhere in here to have breakfast. You
And we're
can't have
tired.
toast or anything. And Isabel is starving. And basically, though, there's an item in the papers today which is saying that there's certain foods that people no longer want or will order. These foods will die out. Maybe not a bad idea. At top of the list is jellied eels.
Yeah, 65% of youngsters haven't eaten them. I've never eaten a jellied eel, no intention to.
No, but I have eaten an eel. I do this cookery programme in Ireland, which may surprise you.
Because you're no cook.
And eels are there on the menu, and the cooks prepared these eels, so I had to eat it, hadn't I? And it wasn't bad. It was a bit like skate.
Very fishy. Strong flavour. Chewy.
No, it was, how
Bony?
would I describe it? Dry. No. Anyway, it's not good to look at. It's
No, well, I've seen them to look at.
It
But a
tasted
jellied
all
eel,
right.
it's a big Essex thing, isn't it, a jellied eel?
Yeah. What is kedgeree?
Kedgeree, oh, I've had that many times.
What is
so
that?
that's eggs and fish, I think like a smoked haddock, something like that.
Yeah,
all
but at
very quite
breakfast.
yellowy, and you have it at breakfast, yeah. I used to have that quite a lot, but we'd have it for supper, as a sort of light supper occasionally.
Yeah. Okay, it doesn't sound bad.
It's lovely, yeah.
I'm okay with haggis.
I'm okay with haggis.
Now, this amazed me. You do not know, Isabel does not know what steak Diane
Never
is.
heard of it.
I think it's a 70s sort of culinary. But I haven't. I do genuinely go to a local restaurant and I have steak Diane.
Really?
It's a sort of like a peppercorn sauce with a liqueur through it on your
Well,
steak.
I'm not on my own. Apparently 36% of young adults, does that include me? Have never heard of it, so I'm not alone in that. Liver and onions, I mean, that does smell good, but it doesn't taste so good.
It's good for you. My mother used to tell us it was good for us.
Yeah, do you think it is?
I don't know, it's full of iron, apparently. I had this last night.
Welsh rarebit. Isn't that just
rarebit.
cheese on toast?
Yeah, with, again, there's some sauce or something through it. Mustard. There's mustard through it.
Yum. I love that.
That's good. But here's an absolute disgrace, and you'll regret this if you allow this to happen. Apparently, Arctic roll is dying out. I mean, there should be a law brought in about that. Baked Alaska. It's beautiful.
These are like
dish.
school dinner puddings. That's what I used to have at
baked
school.
Alaska
Yes,
at
you
school.
do.
Baked Alaska, it takes 2 hours to prepare or something.
Oh, is this the one where you flame the outside in a sort of meringue? No,
Yeah.
but
What
we
school
definitely.
did you go?
Well, same as your son.
We'll just flame the outside of the meringue
No,
here.
Arctic roll we definitely had at school. Anyway, they're all dying out. Steak and kidney pudding. My dear Nana, God rest her soul, she used to make all of that herself from scratch. Anyway, let us know.
It's so nice.
Are you into all of those sorts of things? And what will you miss if it dies out?
I've never had. What is spotted dick?
It's like a sponge with raisins in and custard. Never had it, but I think that's what it is. Liz Kershaw will know.
Do you know what my favourite food of all is? Angel Delight.
Do you know, mine too, butterscotch flavour. Oh, it's the best. I make that for my kids as a little treat, and I think that's healthy. Anyway, we're being told in our area we ought to do some news now, so we're going to move on from talking about
The time is 6:25, and the top stories are these. Ukraine's President Zelensky is stressing once again that he won't abandon the capital, Kyiv, saying he'll stay as long as it takes to win the war. In his latest video address, he says that the Russians are having a nightmare after underestimating the resolve of the Ukrainian people. He's going to speak to Parliament later today by video link.
In other news, residents of a high-rise building which caught fire in East London yesterday say they'd previously complained about not being able to hear the fire alarms in the building's stay-put policy. At least 20 fire engines and 125 firefighters tackled the 17th floor blaze at the Relay building in Whitechapel High Street. One person was taken to hospital, others were treated at the scene.
Scary. There's a warning employees in Britain could be facing the sharpest decline in real income since the 1970s. Think tank, the Resolution Foundation, estimates a fall of 4% per working household in the financial year 2022 to 2023.
Health Secretary Sajid Javid is expected to announce a list of reforms to NHS patient care today. Changes include giving patients greater choice and control over the care they receive, plus a bigger role for the NHS app.
School leaders are warning there is still a very long way to go to tackle the pay difference between male and female head teachers. Teachers' unions say the evidence of the salary gap has got worse over the last 10 years.
It's hoped pregnant women and new mothers will be able to have better access to mental health services as part of a new project. The scheme, Amplifying Maternal Voices, set up by a couple of charities, will run for at least 2 years nationwide.
A woman with Down syndrome who is campaigning for a change in abortion laws will be meeting senior judges today to find out if she can take her case to the Court of Appeal.
Heidi Crowther from Coventry is challenging the law which allows abortions up to birth for babies with a disability. She says it's discrimination when healthy babies can only be aborted up to 24 weeks.
Well, our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu has been to meet her.
Heidi Crowther and her husband James have been married for just over a year, and in that time Heidi has become the face of a campaign that is calling for a major change in the abortion law. She says the current law discriminates against people with Down syndrome, and she wants the law to change to stop abortions after 24 weeks of pregnancy.
The reason why I'm so upset is because I feel that no one wants a baby like me, and no one loves me, and I just feel like unwanted. I want people to just see me, and this is me. I want people to look at who I am.
So she's really passionate about it, and I'm very proud of her that she wants to do it, and we'll support her as far as we need to go.
In England, Scotland and Wales, abortions are allowed for up to 24 weeks of a pregnancy. But if there is a substantial risk that the child will be born with physical or mental abnormalities as to be seriously handicapped, then terminations are permitted up until birth. She's already taken the government to the High Court and lost her case, but now she's determined to be heard by the Court of Appeal.
I'll go to the highest court in the land. I'll go to Buckingham Palace. I'll go to the ends of the earth to make them feel my love.
Her campaign to change the abortion law has gained huge support, including actor Sally Phillips, whose son has Down syndrome.
Quite shocked, really, that we've got this far. We've now got the Equality Act, the Disability Act, yet still, before birth, we have this discrimination.
But the issue is divisive, and not all disability rights activists agree with changing the law.
I don't think it's fair or humane to force a woman to carry a pregnancy to term when that baby would die. Some women will want to, and we should support them to do that. But some will say, look, there's a diagnosis of a condition that's incompatible with life, and I want to terminate pregnancy now. And I think we should allow them to do that. Sorry that Heidi feels distressed, and I can understand why. But I don't think that giving women and men choice in this area is eugenic, as long as they have a real choice, as long as they're full information and allowed and encouraged to do what's right for them and their family.
Heidi says this campaign is her life and she'll continue to fight for as long as it takes. Balvinder Sidhu for GB News.
Your views at GB News. We'll take a break there. Coming up, a look at the morning newspapers. Michael Portillo this morning and Liz Kershaw after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Crumpets and marmalade. Janet's having that for breakfast.
Oh.
She tells
Do you
us.
have marmalade on crumpets?
Oh, I would have it on anything. The only reason we're bringing this up is that
It is in the papers.
Isabel is absolutely ravenous today, and every time I talk about food, it makes her belly give one of those noises. You know, like that boomerang noise and that.
You're not hungry at all, are you? It's just me.
That's the noise I'm listening
I
to.
am hungry. I barely ate yesterday.
Let's get into the front pages of the time at 6:33.
Yes.
The Mirror, first of all. And there's some heartbreaking claims at the front of these papers. Please help us. 2 little boys travelled 1,000 miles, and still they say the government here won't let them in. Why?
At the front page of the Times, shredded faces chart Putin's strategy better than any map. Look at that picture.
According to The Guardian, Kyiv has rejected President Putin's offer to let people flee into Russia.
Front of the Daily Mail this morning says there's a new dash for gas to break Putin's grip.
The Independent has the sick children forced from their beds by Putin's bombardment.
The Eye says the UK is urged to help refugees. It says the refugee scheme is in chaos as the Prime Minister's pressured to open Britain's doors.
OK, and we stay on that refugee theme now. We've got Michael Portillo here in the studio. We've got Liz Kershaw with the papers. Very good to see you both.
Good morning.
Morning.
And Liz, you want to continue this. We go to the Eye for this. This is the front page, which we've just mentioned.
Well, I just don't understand why families who've travelled, and these 2 little boys being a member of one of those families, who've travelled across Europe to come and join their relatives or just get safe haven in this country are being stopped at Calais. Of course, we know that the UK border is on the French side, but it just seems absolutely outrageous to me. I have a house on the beach on the Dover Straits, and I've witnessed, and I know I get, attacked for this, but I've witnessed boat after boat just pitch upon the beach, boatfuls, mainly young men, who deliberately, as instructed by the people traffickers, destroy all papers, passports, evidence of where they came from, because that...
This was all before the Ukraine conflict.
Well, yeah, I'm just comparing the policy of the British government, or the rules.
Right.
So if you come to this country by an illegal route...
With no papers.
With having destroyed any evidence of your country of origin, then you have to be taken in by the asylum system, no questions, housed, accepted, given money, your application considered. However, if you present yourself at Calais, evidently, with a Ukrainian passport, with ID, with a family from a recognised war zone,
with a family to go to,
then you stopped. Yeah. And there was a report on the TV last night. There's this guy who's been highlighting his story for 3 days now, and he was told in Calais, and he was followed by reporters. Yes, the British government now has a processing centre where you can get a visa in Calais, in the dock area, and they scrambled around and they found this building. There were 3 officials there from the Home Office, and they had a box of Kit Kats and a box of crisps, but they didn't have any visa applications. So it was... I just don't understand the double standards.
But what would you say...
If you do the right thing, it doesn't pay.
But you could say the officials are doing the right thing, and they could say rules are rules.
Well, there are rules for people who come with a passport, and there are rules for people who come unidentified. And
there's just a human story of 2 little boys here.
Yeah, well, the little kids. I mean, you just want to make sure they get somewhere. I mean, it's horrible for a child. It's just horrible.
Well, I want to get your take on this, Michael, because the Prime Minister came out yesterday and he said it's important to ensure the correct paperwork, and they are adamant, aren't they, that this is going to be a visa process. This isn't going to be an open door like the EU's doing for Ukrainian refugees. 1.7 million people have fled war. Do you think 300 is right? Are we doing enough?
I think the government looks in a very poor mess here, and they're falling over each other and they're disagreeing with each other. And I think Priti Patel's reputation is, in particular, in peril. And the government, in some ways, is able to move at great speed. For example, the Economic Punishments Bill, whatever it's called, has gone through the House of Commons very, very fast in order to punish Russian oligarchs, quite rightly. But we obviously need a tailor-made scheme for Ukrainian war refugees. I do think it's important that we don't take in spies and criminals. So I dare say there have to be some checks, but this thing has to move at great speed. It's all very well saying how much we support Ukraine, but if Poland has taken 1 million people and we've taken 300, then we're not even on the board in this game.
Well, Liz, in response to what you said, Cliff has been in touch at GBNews on Twitter, and he says, if our weak government hadn't invited tens of thousands of illegal or economic immigrants to drift across the channel, you're saying? Well,
they didn't invite them, did they? But they
didn't stop them.
They're coping with them. They're taking them in and supporting them, in a humanitarian way. But the difference is, I'm repeating myself, one group has no papers and the other group has papers and all the evidence we need, and they're just treated entirely differently.
So what he's saying is we would have a lot more room for genuine refugees.
Apparently Ireland have taken in 1,800 Ukrainian refugees already. Just yesterday they took 486, which is more than we've taken, clearly, in the entire time since war broke out. It is shameful.
Well, one of the excuses of the British government is, well, that, actually not a lot of Ukrainian people actually want to come to the UK. Well, they're going beyond the UK, aren't they? Ireland is, last time I looked, the other side of us. So, yeah, they do. They are willing to travel, obviously.
Michael, the cost of living crisis, the Daily Express has this on the front page, and they call it the price we must pay to defeat Putin. What's your take?
Well, I think it certainly is the price we will pay, and probably it is the price that we must pay. And I think what is still being debated is what the price will be. So by that, I mean, first of all, that it's wholly unpredictable. We don't know where petrol prices are going to go to, or natural gas prices, or electricity prices, or even food prices, because food prices are affected both by the loss of food production and by the fact that food has to be transported, and that fuel bills are going to be much higher, and that shortages produce higher prices. But also, what should be the price we pay? In other words, to what extent are we prepared to use economic weapons against Russia, even if these weapons are going to some extent hurt us? Now, for example, if the European Union didn't take oil from Russia, I think that would be manageable for the European Union, but obviously it would put up oil prices, it would create shortages and difficulties. It would also lead to the possibility that the Russians would retaliate by cutting off natural gas. Now, the cutting off of natural gas to the European Union would be something close to catastrophic, because the European Union has managed to get itself into a position where it's 40% dependent on Russia for its natural gas. So what is being debated, what was being debated yesterday in London, what was being raised yesterday by the Americans, was whether we should boycott Russian oil with the risk that they will cut off natural gas. So we don't know how high is the price that we're going to pay, but we certainly know we're going to pay a very high price. I think the prospect here is that we stand some chance of ruining the Russian economy, I mean really wrecking the Russian economy, but a very strong chance also that we'll plunge ourselves into recession.
Okay. Times.
We go to the Mirror. We're talking about boycotts, we're talking about sanctions. And you want to talk, Liz, about the companies, the British companies, the American companies that are still trading in Russia?
Well, obviously, some huge companies have pulled out, whether it be banks or tech companies. Apple, a huge thing when Apple pulled out. But I don't know. Is it right that they're still flipping burgers in Moscow? And you know, it's such a trivial thing, you'd think, but we're talking about angst over whether we should ban Russian oil and whether they'll withdraw gas. But I don't understand why. You've got fashion companies who have withdrawn from the Russian high street, and there are still firms trading there, so should it be a blanket thing?
Well, let me show you something. Let's see the front page of the Mirror again, if we could just see that, because that's where the story is. Let's see that front page of the Mirror. Now, if we take the sanctions strap away, lovely.
Yeah.
So there you've got who's trading there, including McDonald's, right? And you've got two little lads above who would be targeted or marketed or would give anything for a hamburger.
Well, they're the ones at Calais, aren't they?
Yeah, and there is the contrast.
Yeah.
The lads who can't get into the country, who are fleeing their homeland, and there are international companies just determined to take the buck.
They are. I suppose a counter-argument is that it's not the ordinary Russian people who are instigating this international disgrace, and, you know...
They should be brought to their attention.
They won't really know. The only way... 67% of Russian people, I read this week, only watch state television, so they're only getting the party line. So, yeah, it won't prompt them to ask questions unless things change very visibly and practically in their everyday lives, like, why can't I use Twitter anymore? Why can't I buy a Big Mac? So...
I was with people yesterday and they were drinking vodka. And I said, should you be drinking vodka?
Made in Warrington.
Warrington, yeah.
Well, that was the whole... Then I didn't realise that it's made in Warrington.
Well, supermarkets like Morrison's, I think, have withdrawn actual genuine Russian vodka imported from Russia.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the big selling line, I think it was in the 80s or 90s, was Smirnoff, made in Warrington. So, you know, that's not supporting the
Warrington
Russian economy.
pronounced with a V.
Yeah,
Warrington.
yeah.
Michael, let's go to the front page of The Telegraph. This is talking about this, the sort of peace talks, if you like, that have been going on, and the ridiculous demands being set out by Putin, who wants these humanitarian corridors that will lead Ukrainians trying to flee war into the arms of the enemy, only to go to Belarus or to Russia.
Well, let's separate two things.
Okay.
And first of all, what are the demands? I mean, the demands that have been made now by spokesmen for Putin, rather than Putin himself, are somewhat surprising, because he went to war saying that Ukraine had no right to exist, that it was a non-state, and that it was run by Nazis and had to be denazified. In the terms that have now been set out for peace, none of those things is ostensibly mentioned. What's mentioned instead is the recognition of the seizure of Crimea, the recognition of the two eastern republics, and the neutrality of Ukraine, which would mean that it wouldn't be part of NATO or the European Union. Now, these are rather puzzling because, you know, really the de facto seizure of Crimea was not being challenged. The two eastern states have been under Russian control for a very long time, and the neutrality of Ukraine was there for the asking anyway. I mean, Ukraine was not going to join NATO, and it's not very far advanced towards joining the European Union. So these demands are somewhat puzzling. I mean, they may, of course, simply be a trap. I mean, they may just be nonsense, claptrap and lies, which is what normally comes out of Russia. But were they any more than that, then they would represent an enormous change in the demands that Russia was making only 12 days ago when it invaded. So, rightly, these demands are being met with some skepticism in the West. Of course, it must be for Ukraine to decide as a sovereign nation what it makes of these proposals. But I must say the proposals have raised quite a lot of surprise, I think.
He's also demanded Ukraine ceases all military action. But, I mean, all they're doing is defending themselves. So, I mean, that seems a completely unreasonable demand as well.
You would presumably at some point in discussions get into demilitarization. And of course, Ukraine has a right to defend itself. But then Russia might want to make some points about long-range missiles that are located in Ukraine. So there is a discussion to be had about armament. But of course, you're absolutely right in the first instance. The only reason there's a war, the only reason any Ukrainian is firing a bullet is because his country has been invaded.
Yeah, absolutely.
Liz, the front page of the Times, this vivid picture, it was quite horrifying, actually, when you look at it. What is this there to demonstrate? What are we looking at here?
Well, the headline is that this wounded woman's face charts Putin's strategy better than any map. That's a hell of a claim. I think... I'd just like to go back to what Michael was talking about. I heard that about Putin's demands late last night or in the early hours of this morning, and I actually thought, oh, good. It gave me a bit of hope. You know, last week he was going to nuke us all, and this week he's saying, well, the equivalence of, well, just give us Devon and Cornwall and we'll go home. And I thought that's a sign, maybe showed a sign of weakness, and he's getting a bit more realistic about things. Well, I think that says more than this. It's terrible about this woman's face and all the other pictures of suffering and injury. But it's not. I don't think the claim in the headline is worth anything. But I think it's more relevant that Putin is now saying, swapsies, you know, you do that. And
well, he's also saying
the woman's face is about whether the war is really about destroying the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
I mean, here's a woman whose face has been destroyed.
Yeah.
And we're watching civilians being blown up every day.
Yeah.
So the contrast, I think, between the picture and the demands that have now being made by the Russians are, is this a war about annihilating Ukraine? Annihilating it as a country, as an independent polity, and reducing its people to dead and injured. What is the policy of the Russians? So I think it's a pretty effective picture, and I think actually the question it asks is quite a suitable one.
Okay. Guys, got to leave it there. Okay. We're going to continue talking about this. We're now talking about technology and what influence it has on the war. Will Gaia, let's go to him. Will's a technology journalist, and Will, since the start of the conflict, we've seen videos on social media showing explosions, aeroplanes from Ukraine. Some of these are real and what is not. And I suppose the question is, Isabel, what can we trust? What can we trust on social media? Will, tell us.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we should all be concerned about. There's videos being posted from previous conflicts. There's badly edited videos claiming to show certain narratives. You've got the Russians posting certain pieces of clear propaganda. You've got emotional, passionate and Ukrainians under the fog of war posting stuff which might not be accurate too. So you actually face a real challenge in a situation like this. And certainly lots of people are suffering from what feels like information overload during this particular conflict. There's various things you can do to ensure you're looking at what should be right information in the hope that journalists have verified it. Look at reputable news organizations online. follow the places you know, the newspapers, the websites, the broadcasters that you know on these platforms, and also be careful not necessarily to share information that others have shared unless you can find it somewhere else, because it's all too easy actually to get involved in sharing this misinformation. That's what people want you to do in situations like this. They want you to share something that isn't true, so many people can then see it on the internet.
Lots of traps that people can fall into, lots of pictures doing the rounds of, I think, a sort of a war hoax from a TV series in 2020 where a makeup artist is painting the blood onto Ukrainians. But I just wanted to draw attention to our viewers and our listeners to a diktat that was sent out within a very reputable news organisation here within the UK. A friend of mine sent it to me yesterday, suggesting that absolutely no questions to any of their colleagues who were in Moscow or indeed anywhere in Russia could be anything other than what was pre-agreed. There could be no ad-libbing. It had to all be set out beforehand. And that just goes to show the extent of the risk now to Western, is where the journalism is.
What are the consequences of breaking that diktat?
Well,
for
exactly.
For the journalist who's broadcasting.
Their lives are in threat then, aren't they?
Jail threat.
Jail or
15 years in prison.
Abuse. Yeah, well, physical abuse as well. I mean, all
so
sorts
what it's
of
saying
reports.
is you can only speak to someone in Russia, a reporter on the ground, ask with pre-agreed questions, and you cannot then follow up and say, but do you mean this, or what's happening today, or anything else, because that journalist stands every chance of being locked away.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why Russia has started locking down Western media sources. You can't use Twitter anymore in Russia. It doesn't work. Facebook doesn't work either. They were being used to show large protests within Russia. Now, Roskomnadzor, who are the Russian telecoms communications agency, like the watchdog, have said they're doing this for the protection of the special mission and also to stop fake news being spread. But these were the platforms that were being used. And Liz mentioned a while back that 60% of Russians believe that this is real and get their news from state. Get their news from state TV. It's younger people who don't. It's the platforms that the under 25s are using, things like TikTok, things like Instagram, even Facebook to an extent, are the ones that the Russian state are now cracking down on because they're really concerned. I have friends who work in Russia too, who are journalists, and they're in a situation now where they're doing anything but the conflict in Ukraine because they are genuinely terrified of finding themselves in a position where they break a rule and get locked up for 15 years. That's one of the reasons why Chinese-owned TikTok have actually shut down one half of their platform. You can now only look at old Russian videos on TikTok, which is the biggest platform in Russia for under 25s, because they've actually said as a company they're worried about the risks to their staff physically being locked up for sharing so-called misinformation.
Will, really, thanks for the update. Thanks for explaining that. Will Guyot's a technology journalist. We're moving on. The strategic review of policing. There's a report on this is being released later this morning. 50 recommendations on how public trust could be restored in police forces in England and Wales. Yeah, it's believed the review will say police officers have to pass a licence to practice test every 5 years. Let's get the views now of former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley. Is this going to be enough to change public confidence?
Unfortunately, I think not. This report has been commissioned by the Police Foundation, a think tank, who will doubtless try to claim their independence. But when you drill down on that think tank, you'll see that they're funded by bodies like the National Police Chiefs Council Commission and other people who are inevitably linked to the establishment. This is not going to be that bowling through the door, thorough, exhaustive review of policing, which we all so desperately need. But it's interesting, though, that if you're a serving police officer, you have to pass what is termed a fitness to practice test, right? And so the idea is that that would refresh you as to what is bad behaviour.
Yeah,
what is
nurses and doctors
practice.
do all that kind of thing, so it'd just be applied to the police as well.
Yeah, I think there will be some elements that undoubtedly will help. But let's remember, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, who may have had advance sight of it, if not, it will land on her desk today. She said she will consider the recommendations. So these are not all going to be driven through and applied and suddenly regain the trust of the public in policing.
Yeah, Peter, just looking inside the Mail today, Deputy Chief Constable Blythe is quoted as saying that the job attracts men who want power to coerce, which is just such a horrible thought. But one of the suggestions in this review is that bonuses will be offered to try and attract detectives. Is that going to stop that problem?
I've always had a bit of a concern about the word bonus when it's attached to police salaries in any shape or form. You should want to do the job. You should be committed to the job so that you commit to every task every day, even when that's difficult, and you are a selfless public servant. Let's not sugarcoat any of this. Policing has got some considerable, deep-rooted problems that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed not only for the public, but for the good cops, of which there are so many.
OK, well, let me ask you then, what should be in that report that you believe is not there?
I think that the whole structure of this report and the team that looked into it should have been entirely different. It should have had fundamental independence, and it should have been publicly funded from government funds. But that's not to say that it would have been beholden to the government in any way, shape or form. We need a fearless review. We need a truthful review, and we need somebody heading it up who is going to be trusted, and people will tell them what's really going on.
Peter Blexley, thank you very much indeed. Peter is a former Scotland Yard detective. Thank you. Your views very welcome at GB News.
Stay with us this morning. Lots more coming your way at 7 o'clock, including all the latest updates from Ukraine. That's after your weather forecast.
Good morning. Another chilly start out there. It will turn milder as we go through the next few days. A brisk wind, though, making it feel even colder, despite a fair bit of sunshine, certainly in the east. But further west, this weather front is slowly approaching, and that will increase the cloud and eventually bring some showers. For the time being, though, high pressure is still controlling things, and that will bring most places a dry, fine day. A touch of frost out there this morning, but plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, eastern England and most of Scotland. Across Wales, southwest England, Northern Ireland, we are seeing the clouds steadily increase, and here are a few showers just trickling into Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and across much of Northern Ireland during the afternoon. The breeze will be pretty noticeable, but it is slowly bringing milder air. So temperatures up to double figures across the Midlands and Wales, southwest England, 8 or 9 in Belfast, and only 8 or 9 in eastern parts of England, despite a fair bit of sunshine. There will be that noticeable wind also. We'll see some of that rain edging across Scotland through this evening, so turning damp for a time, but it does tend to clear away before the next area of rain edges into Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the early hours. Temperatures won't be anything like as low as the night just gone. We're generally well above freezing thanks to more cloud and that brisk wind. It will make for a different feel, certainly on Wednesday morning. It won't feel anything like as cold, but again, for most of England and Wales, Wednesday's dry and bright. A wet day, though, for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. This line of rain, it's a weather front, it's just not moving very far. Some of that rain could be heavy as well. Eventually, it trickles into West Wales, southwest England. But for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, tomorrow is another dry day where we see some hazy sunshine. In the east, we could easily get into the teens, and temperatures ticking up further as we go through the week. We'll see some patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, but a lot of dry weather in the east, but often quite windy. As I said, those temperatures starting to tick up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
President of Ukraine, Zelensky, will make a historic address to the House of Commons today from besieged Kyiv.
A very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 8th of March. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
We're live across the whole of the world on your TV, radio and online. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Let's have a look at this. President Zelensky will address MPs in the House of Commons. That's going to happen this afternoon at 5 o'clock. Last night, his foreign minister had a phone call with our foreign secretary and called for new sanctions on Russia.
The world is watching the words of the Prime Minister ahead of his meeting with the leaders of the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland and Slovakia today, as his government comes under increasing pressure to grant safety to those fleeing Ukrainian invasion.
We're going to be speaking to our national reporter Paul Hawkins. He's in Chelm, near the Polish border.
We're live at the Helm Refugee Registration Centre, where many Ukrainians like these are taking buses to a new country and a new life.
And she's the Russian socialite who was married to the man dubbed Putin's banker.
We'll be joined by Countess Alexandra Tolstoy right here in the studio this morning.
And it's International Women's Day today. We'll be speaking to Shadow Minister Annalise Dodds and asking you to tell us about the women in your life. Isabel is one of the many women in my life at the moment. And
who inspires you is what you were going to say.
It was. No. I sit in awe. You know, sometimes I think a lot of this, are you celebrating Women's Day? You don't want to celebrate anything. You just want to mark it and you want to make it a difference. And I don't like the tokenism of, well, let's let women do everything today, but not tomorrow.
No, you're right. But let's talk about who does inspire us. Let us know if you've got an amazing mum or sister or colleague or friend or somebody in the public eye that really inspires you. Let us know.
So many teachers in my life throughout 14 years at school.
Here's within the industry, Tanya Breyer yesterday, real role model for me.
Yes.
My mum, my grandmother, amazing women.
My mum, I have to mention my mum. Oh my God. My 93-year-old mum.
She's amazing.
Who's a tour de force. But you know, great inspiration. And you're all going to be the same. And so many people in sport, for instance, as well.
Yeah, lots of female role models.
And even politics.
Yeah, you're right. Let us know, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Now, there's going to be something really worth watching in the House of Commons this afternoon. They say this is going to be historic. It involves Ukraine's President Zelensky. And what he's going to do is he's going to come on video screens in the chamber, and he's going to make this address to the Commons today. This is going to happen at 5 o'clock about the whole situation.
Yeah, the likes of which has never been done before. We've never zoomed in a Prime Minister or a President from another country into the Commons. Obviously, exceptional circumstances during a war. The full House will all want to hear what he has to say. We'll have full coverage of it here on GB News, of course. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has promised that the government will go as far as it can with sanctions ahead of meetings today with more world leaders.
Okay. Now, meanwhile, Poland has announced plans to set up a £1.3 billion fund to help the refugees after receiving more than 1 million people just to Poland alone. So Polish people are being praised for their help, including donating prams at a railway station near the borders, which we think was just a lovely gesture there. It just means people getting off those trains, they just have something to ferry their children.
Yeah, well, look, that's the positive side to it. But all of this comes as aid agencies and police in Poland are warning that women and children do need critical protection.
Well, let's find out what that actually means. Paul Hawkins is in Poland for us this morning, and there's a lot of concern, there's a lot of eyebrows being raised. Paul, I mean, it's just, I don't know how you bring in any normality to an evacuation scheme, but the worry is a lot of these refugees, most of them, vast majority, are women, they are children and young girls, and there are still those who could take advantage of them.
Yeah, morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel, from the Holmes Refugee Registration Centre, where we are at the moment. Yeah, you know, there are vulnerable women and children. I have to say, some of the women we've spoken to, though, incredibly strong as well. They're more worried about the children who are vulnerable, but a lot of fighting spirit, a lot of strength being shown by a lot of women, and we can speak to some of them now, actually. This is Victoria and Olga, who are from Korsten, which is in Zhytomyr region, about 350 kilometres inside Ukraine. They're heading for Krakow, and just first of all, and we're going to, Victoria's English isn't great and her mum doesn't speak English, so we're going to be talking through a translator, but first of all, Victoria, how are you feeling?
Більш-менш зараз нормально, але відчуваю страх.
You know, yesterday I was so scared, but today it's pretty normal.
Okay. What were you scared about?
А чому у вас був страх? І за чого?
Через ситуацію в країні, що зараз відбувається.
Because of the situation of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine.
Okay. And your mum, how are you feeling, Olga?
А як ви себе почуваєте, пані Ольга?
Батьки мої рідні лишилися. Ми хоч тут в безпеці. Вони там.
We are so scared about the situation in Ukraine, and obviously we're scared what's going on in my country.
And your dad, where is he? What's he doing?
Де зараз ваш тато і чим він зараз займається? Де він зараз?
Зараз він вдома, але можливо
Father is home now, but he's helping of our territorial defense. He's helping him. Them.
Is he okay?
А як він себе? Він тримається? Yes, he's okay.
You're heading for Krakow. Have you been to Poland before?
Це ваш перший раз взагалі в Польщі? Ви були колись раніше в Польщі?
ні, не були перший раз.
It's the first time in Poland.
Do you speak Polish? No.
А ви знаєте трошки польську мову? Zero, we don't speak Polish at all.
How do you feel about the generosity of the Polish people?
Як ви відноситесь і бачите, як відносяться поляки зараз до українців?
Ми їм дуже вдячні, що вони нас так прийняли. Приймають нас всіх.
We're so happy for Polish, because they're helping us, on the reception center at all. We are grateful and thankful for the Polish citizens.
And there are worries about the vulnerability of women and children travelling out of Ukraine alone. Have you felt safe?
Ви відчуваєте себе в безпеці, тому що ми бачимо, що тут лише жінки і діти. Ви відчуваєте, що ви в безпеці зараз? Yeah.
You have felt safe. Okay. And Vladimir Putin has opened up humanitarian corridors to Russia and Belarus and places like that. Do you think anyone would want to go there?
Дивіться, Путін відкрив гуманітарні коридори до Росії і Білорусі. Як ви думаєте, українці захочуть туди поїхати?
Нормальні українці, мабуть, туди не поїдуть.
If you're a good Ukrainian, nobody who will love Ukraine, nobody can go to Belarus or Russia.
And Volodymyr Zelensky is going to speak to British politicians later. He's going to address the British Parliament. What would you like to hear him say?
Володимир Зеленський буде скоро виступати перед британським парламентом і перед британськими політиками. Що ви хотіли сказати Зеленському? Що він мав донести? Яку позицію до Британії?
Я не знаю, він так робить для нашого народу все, що можливо, але
We understand that
що вони якось домовляться, нам допоможуть, щоб у нас ця війна.
We are waiting for help, even for Britain, because Zelensky doing pretty well job during this war. But we hope to support from all of the countries on the world support Ukraine. because we want to back home.
Не в руїни, а в свої власні домівки.
Yes, for us it's so important to back home.
And speaking of which, how was home when you left?
Ну і найголовніше, в якому стані ваше місто було, коли ви його залишили?
Ну, у нас ще місто було в нормальному, в цілому стані. У нас тільки навколишні вже міста, і нам дуже було, відчувалися ці всі вибухи.
We heard the attack and missiles and shooting around the city, but our home is safe, but the Korostin was under attack, Zhytomyr as well.
Really good. Really, thank you for speaking to us. Really appreciate your time.
Дуже дякую за те, що ви знайшли час і поговорили з нами. І гарної вам поїздки до Польщі.
That is Olga and Victoria and Isaac here, 4-year-old Isaac, who's travelling with them as well. Important to say as well that Victoria is a student, Olga is a nurse, their dad's a park ranger. It's easy to think about the term Ukrainian refugees, but when you hear about the lives that they lead and the jobs that they do, we often define ourselves by our occupation. It's often the second question, what's your name, what do you do for a living? And when you hear about the jobs they do, everyday jobs like we do back in the UK, it adds a level of humanity to it. They're not just a refugee, they're a person, a human being, they have lives, and they want to go back to Ukraine and carry on living those lives. That's why a lot of them want to stay in Poland and near to the Ukraine border.
Paul, I so agree with you that so many of us are defined by what we do. And when people often, for instance, lose a job, I think it's really dehumanizing because, who are you? I'm Isabel, I'm a journalist. And then you're not a journalist anymore. Who are you? I'm Isabel. I used to be a journalist type thing. So I think that's so important to humanise and identify who people are. Paul, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, and Olga's face, she just looked exhausted. She looked completely exhausted, and there she was with her dog. It really just brings it home, doesn't it?
When you think about it, when you travel through an airport, you go on a train station, you take a ferry, you go on holiday.
It's exhausting.
How tired are you? And
add into that trauma, being separated from your loved ones, losing your worldly possessions, and the freezing cold conditions. No wonder
there
they
are
look
pictures in the papers today. We were just saying you would get claustrophobic of a
railway station.
Just let me see if I've got that there.
Here it is.
There it is. Yeah. So it's just like you imagine you queue for a train or a plane or whatever. That is just a crowd on one platform of refugees. How do you put order into that? It's absolutely inhumane.
Speaking of which, Ukraine is accusing Moscow of using inhumane medieval-style war tactics. Let's get more details on this from Colonel Tim Collins. He's a former British Army officer and joins us this morning. A very good morning to you. It certainly has been like going back in time, hasn't it? Some of the war tactics being put in place by the Russians.
Well, the Russians, their plan has culminated now, and they're in a great deal of difficulty. The plan was to get this done over pretty quickly. The thaw's beginning, it's March, and when the rains come, their ability to move off the roads is going to be reduced hugely, and they've got a real problem in their hands.
And by a real problem, just explain that to us.
Well, essentially, their momentum of their attack has broken down. It's demoralising their soldiers. They're taking big losses. Their logistics chain appears to have broken down, and they find themselves very vulnerable to resistance units when they have to travel on roads because they can't move off because of the mud. Then they're canalised and they're easy targets for resistance forces. So I think that, again, it's a question of what the overall strategy of ending this war is. There's a possibility that the Ukrainians might have a stalemate. There's a possibility the Ukrainians might even win because the Russians have been drawn towards Odessa, which is a really important town. But the fact that it's crucial to the Ukrainians and it's the main port, but the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea have already been cut off to them, and so Odessa will be fought for very hard, and it may well be that's their Stalingrad. That's where ultimately the tide changes. And in the same regard, in terms of the Russians have failed to achieve air supremacy. They still have air superiority, but with air superiority, they're losing large amounts of aircraft And these are expensive aircraft. I mean, an Su-30 came down the other day, that's $40 million. You saw the Mi-24 Hind being shot down, that's $36 million. They can't afford this.
Colonel, we've also seen heavy losses in terms of staff. 2 generals in the last week, 1 very senior general in the last 24 hours. How much is that going to affect morale for the Russian military? There have been lots of whispers, indeed reports about members of the special forces, for example, actually briefing against Putin and the Kremlin.
Well, I think the big hope that we have ultimately is that it will be the generals who actually remove Putin. They remove him on the basis that it's his war, it's not the war of the Russian people. And they remove him on the basis of that they were lied to, they were kept in the dark, any failures they're being blamed on, but they can point to, we weren't told, we weren't briefed, how, you kept it to yourself and then you expect us to work miracles. So hopefully there will be a fracture within the Kremlin. That's our best hope, to end this before we stagger towards any talk of an air exclusion zone, which is effectively a declaration of war. And this happened in the Second World War. There was a famous conversation between Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt where we bought American airplanes, but they said you can't come and get them, but we'll push them to the Canadian border and you can come and pull them over. That's before they'd gone to war with Japan. These are the sort of stakes that we're facing at the moment, because war with Russia could escalate to nuclear war. War with Russia could ultimately lead to war with China, a proper global conflict. We don't want that. We need to buy time. We hope the generals will remove him.
Could be a very, very important week. I mean, we're only at Tuesday already, but a lot could be determined, a lot could be won, or a lot could be lost.
Lenin said that some weeks, decades happen. These are the weeks.
Colonel Tim Collins, thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. Really appreciate your take on things.
With the time at 7:16, let's get you up to date now with the latest headlines. And residents of a high-rise building which caught fire in East London yesterday say they'd previously complained about not being able to hear the fire alarms and the building's stay-put policy. At least 20 fire engines and 125 firefighters tackled the 17th floor blaze at the Relay building in Whitechapel High Street. One person was taken to hospital, others were treated at the scene.
There's a warning employees in Britain could be facing the sharpest decline in real incomes since the 1970s. Think tank The Resolution Foundation estimates a fall of 4% working household in the financial year 2022 to 2023.
Health Secretary Sajid Javid's expected to announce a list of reforms to NHS patient care today. Changes are to include giving patients greater choice and control over the care they receive, plus a bigger role for the NHS app.
It's hoped pregnant women and new mothers will be able to have better access to mental health services as part of a new scheme. It amplifies maternal voices set up by a couple of charities, will run for at least 2 years nationwide. A big overview of the political scene today, with the Prime Minister hosting more European leaders to address Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And then the big one, we've got Tom Harwood with us in the studio. President Zelensky speaking to Parliament via video link.
Absolutely. President Zelensky speaking not just to the normal way that foreign leaders speak to Parliament, ordinarily done in Westminster Hall. This will be in the House of Commons chamber itself, using the screens that were erected around the chamber. And this will be happening at 5 p.m, a really quite momentous moment. I think it's the first time that a foreign leader has addressed MPs from within the House of Commons chamber. So that's really quite significant. And there'll be 500 headsets handed out to MPs so that they can hear President Zelensky speak, because of course he'll be speaking his native Ukrainian, and it'll be translated live for MPs via those headsets.
And this is, I hear, a 5-minute address?
It's going to be a relatively short address. Yeah. I think it's 5 minutes, but it might well run a little longer. Of course, President Zelensky addressed the European Parliament last week, and so this is sort of the next port of call.
Meanwhile, Tom, government seem to be in chaos over visas. Lots of criticism that we're not giving enough visas to people fleeing war. 1.7 million refugees so far, only 300 have made it through. Families stuck in Calais.
Certainly, and the government would respond by saying they're setting up these visa processing routes just outside Calais. There's a new processing centre being set up, and similarly, there's extra staff being surged to those border countries around Ukraine, particularly Poland, particularly Romania as well. And the UK government would always point to the fact not just of those that have been processed, but those that are being processed, that are going through
Other
that
countries are doing it much
process
quicker
right now. And certainly because the European Union had a visa-free scheme, they don't need to process those applications. So basically everyone who applies can go into those European countries. Whereas in the UK, it's just taking that little bit more time. There are over 19,000 visas currently being processed. Although, of course, these numbers pale in comparison to when we look at, for example, Poland, where over 1 million refugees have already gone into that country. I think we should expect, though, that given that the United Kingdom is that bit further away, that it was estimated there are only 20 to 30,000 Ukrainians living in the United Kingdom already. It may well be that most refugees don't want to come all the way to the UK. They might want to stay closer to home, particularly in countries like
1,800 have been welcomed into Ireland. I think it's a big issue that's going to be addressed today. Tom, thank you very much for that.
Tom back with his own programme 9:30 this morning, and we'll be speaking again between now and then. Thank you very much indeed. So President Zelensky has called for a global boycott of all Russian products, including gas and oil. And what we wanted to do today was actually to find out from you, do you agree with that? Do you shop around for your petrol? Do you decide if you're going to buy, what would you buy from Russia? Vodka? Certain
Vodka,
drinks?
yes.
You know, are there things that, ladder cars, would you say no, not having anything to do with that? Well, joining us to discuss this, consumer journalist Harry Wallop. Harry, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn.
Harry, does this actually change what we have available in our shops? And do you think people do feel principled enough to say, no, not for me, if it's from Putin, if it's from Russia, count me out?
Well, we know that there's a long history of boycotts in the UK. I mean, most notably during apartheid in South Africa. So there would be a large number of consumers who I'm sure would want to boycott goods. The issue with Russia is that we, on the surface, import quite a bit, £18.3 billion worth of goods from Russia come into the UK, but actually not many of them are consumer facing. There's a very small number of Russian goods on the shelves in the supermarket.
So can we actually tell if a petrol station is stocking Russian oil? Do we have the right to ask, or do we know? Or do you think it would affect, would people drive on by if they thought that petrol station is selling Russian oil, that one isn't?
Well, that's a very good question. You, of course, have the right to ask, and everyone should occasionally ask difficult questions of consumer companies. But no, it's going to be almost impossible to tell because particular petrol companies will take their supply from a range of different places. And frankly, an individual petrol station will have no idea of the actual source of that day's delivery. They just know it has been supplied by their wholesaler. I mean, if you want to make tokenistic but real gestures of solidarity, you can buy Ukrainian vodka rather than Russian vodka. A very small number of Russian brands are being pulled off the shelves by the supermarkets. But the most famous vodka brands, say Smirnoff, that's actually owned by a British company, Diageo, and it's made in America. And Stolinshaya, or Stoli, that was often mentioned in sitcoms. I remember Ab Fab, they used to drink Stoli. That is actually made in Latvia, and it has a British chief executive. So it's basically the two vodka brands are Russian Standard Vodka and JJ Whiteley Vodka are the two Russian brands, and the supermarkets have indeed started to pull those.
OK, I'm just thinking of other ways then that consumers in the UK can vote with their purse, if you like. Shell obviously have admitted that they've been buying discounted oil from Russia, so consumers may decide they want to avoid going to Shell petrol stations. What about, for example, lots of criticism about, I think one of the papers says, McShame, these burger companies like McDonald's that haven't pulled out of Russia. How about people here in the UK decide to boycott McDonald's until they decide to pull out in Russia?
Well, so that then is a slightly different issue. Yeah, these are companies that still, so the big companies that have yet to pull out are McDonald's, Coca-Cola, who also, let's not forget, own Costa Coffee in the UK as well as Coca-Cola, and also Pepsi and Starbucks are the big ones that have yet to, the last counted, yet to pull out of Russia. So that is a different kettle of fish, and that is worth considering, because if people around the world did boycott those brands, great deal easier to boycott a Starbucks or a Costa than actually filling up your car when you run out of petrol, when you may not have the option to boycott. Then if you boycotted those brands, then that might put pressure on those brands to pull out of Russia. And that's that is trying to essentially, bring the Russian economy to its knees so that either the people of Russia overthrow Putin or Putin sees sense. Whichever one you see, both are fairly unlikely scenarios, but they are possible. And that is the whole point of these economic sanctions.
Okay, Harry, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Harry Wallop is a consumer journalist. Are you doing your bit to boycott Russia? Tweet us at GBNews. We'll take a break there. Latest sports stories from the papers right after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Sport now from Aidan McGee this morning. We go to the Premier League first of all. Everton absolutely walloped by Spurs.
Oh, this was, look, we were yesterday talking about Manchester United. Everton made Manchester United look like Champions League winners last night. It looks like a championship back four. They've got John Joe Kenny at left back, Michael Keane not playing very well at all, scoring an own goal after 10 minutes, Mason Holgate, a bit part player at the best of times, and an ageing Seamus Coleman. They went behind after 10 minutes, and it was just downhill from there. And this is the problem with Everton, and this is the problem that Frank Lampard has kind of identified in his opening weeks of the season. You can see pictures on the back pages of the paper. You could see it on TV last night. He looked an absolutely desolate figure in that technical area amid 60,000 Tottenham fans baying for him as well. Now, the situation is that he believes that they were playing well for 10 minutes, but they concede that first goal, and the mental toughness, the fortitude is not there. They're just psychologically a little bit brittle in these games, and they were absolutely hammered. And it's a serious situation. It's a serious situation now, Eamonn, because they're 1 point above the bottom three. They've played a game more than some of the teams below them.
No, they haven't. They've actually played games less. Burnley
get less.
Everton are on 25 games, and the only good factor in all of this is that Everton on 25 games, Burnley 26.
Yeah.
Watford and Norwich both played 2 games more.
Yeah, but look at Christmas time. Burnley had 4 games in hand. It doesn't mean a lot in this league. They've now caught up and played 27, and they're still in the bottom 3. I wouldn't have predicted Burnley at the start of the season would have been there. We talked yesterday about the title race. Yeah, Man City looked home and hosed at Christmas time. There's a lot of football to be played. I think Frank Lampard can get more out of this team. But let's not take away from Tottenham as well. They were outstanding. You never know what you're going to get from that team. They went to Manchester City the other week and won 3-2. They went to Leeds and won 4-0. But in among that, there's the cup exit up at Middlesbrough in extra time. There was the defeat at Burnley where Antonio Conte looked for all the world as if he was throwing in the towel. He'd had enough. And then last night, I mean, I have to say, Everton, as poor as Everton were, Tottenham were absolutely ruthless. Harry Kane looks every inch the player that attracted interest from Manchester City in the summer.
And will be attracting interest again this summer.
Yeah, do you fancy him going to United?
I would rather have Haaland.
Would you?
I think,
well, he's a bit younger.
I think City will take Haaland.
Yeah.
And maybe it leaves United with Harry Kane, because I'll tell you what, big talk today in the back of the papers that no Cristiano and no Marcus Rashford. I mean, that they have concerns about their future. I think a lot of people may look and say the Ronaldo project may not have worked out the way it should.
My question would be, was he just too big a star coming back to United to have in that dressing room when the managerial situation is not necessarily stable? I mean, we started the season with Solskjaer, you then come in with Ralph Rangnick. We went through his record yesterday. It's pretty uninspiring. Cristiano Ronaldo may feel that, given that his output in terms of goals this season has been pretty good, he may feel empowered to say, look...
He does feel empowered. I think there's no doubt that he's empowered.
No.
The Rashford situation, I mean, Marcus, coming up through the ranks and whatever, and for the first time questioning whether he's wanted there. The trouble is his performances, though, have not been great this year.
No, I mean, look, we talked about Harry Maguire briefly yesterday about, I think it was Offset, we actually spoke about it, but we talked about... It used to be a thing a few years ago when we talked about the end of an international tournament in the summer playing for England. It's not often England gets deep into a tournament. It hasn't happened for a long time, really, but before 2018. But sometimes, and Rashford did play a big part last summer for England. I think he got off to a bad start, just as Harry Maguire did. The clubs paid for that tournament progress, I would say. And I think Marcus Rashford looks to me like a player at his age. He made his debut, 6 years ago. He looks like he needs a move to me.
OK. Just other news, Scotland and Ukraine's World Cup playoff semi-final has been postponed, and Joe Root is staying as the England cricket captain. Aidan, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a break. We're going to go through the newspapers. We're doing that with Liz Kershaw and Michael Portillo. They won't be talking football, I can guarantee you that, right after this short break.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I know, but it's not. Is it going to go ahead?
Today is, of course, International Women's Day. Not only
What do you say, of course? Do you think people have that circled in their diary?
Absolutely, yeah.
No, I wouldn't say. I hate when journalists say, of course, because you just don't me think, well, no, today is my son's birthday. It's my birthday. I just don't like that, of course. We just should say to people, it is International Women's Day.
It is International Women's Day. Not only is this a day to celebrate the achievements of women, but it's also about accelerating equality. Joining us now from Westminster is Annalise Dodds, Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities. Really good morning to you. Happy International Women's Day. Just first of all, tell us what it means to you.
Well, good morning and happy International Women's Day back. I mean, I think this is a great day to celebrate the achievements of women in our country, but also, of course, to point out where we still need to see change. And today, Labour saying in particular, we've got to acknowledge that women hold the key to our economic recovery and to the stronger economy that we need to see in the future. And we're setting out ways that we could make changes that would be really good for women in our economy, actually good for everyone, because they would be making our economy stronger.
So how would they be doing that? How are women the key to that?
Well, if we look at the boards of companies, for example, that top level of companies, we find that when they have more women, when they're more diverse, more balanced, they actually tend to be more profitable. That's shown very clearly by the evidence. We also know that women-run SMEs, those small and medium-sized companies, they contribute over £50 billion to our economy. But very often, women are actually cut out of accessing the finance that they need. They tend to receive less in finance when they're setting up a business than men. They also, of course, tend to be far less likely to actually be at the top level of companies. In fact, I think it's only 8 out of 100 FTSE 100 chief executive officers who are women. So there are lots of things that need to be changed. They can be changed quickly. As I say, that would be good for women as well as good for our economy as a whole. You know, one thing that Labour is saying, for example, is that we need to be unlocking that finance and that support for women who want to set up companies themselves. We set out plans for 100,000 new businesses in the first 5 years of a Labour government. That would be achieved by start-up loans that would be designed to encourage and support those people who might otherwise not be going into business. Many of those women, for example, who wouldn't otherwise be receiving that support. As I say, great for those women and great for our economy as a whole.
I mean, the only red flag I raise against that, my only concern is, if you say women are the key to a more profitable economy, I would hate to think that employers mean we'll work them longer and we'll pay them less. And the reason I say that, I was absolutely shocked today by a report that says there's a huge pay disparity between women head teachers and men head teachers. And you think, why? It's the same job.
Well, absolutely, Eamonn. And can I just say, by the way, happy birthday to your son as well. But yes, of course, that is really appalling to see. One of the reasons why we think there's that disparity is because although you can compare salaries currently within a company, so women can see if they're paid within the company they work for the same as men, you can't actually compare them across organisations. And that creates big problems when, for example, you've only got one person at the top of an organisation, like a head teacher. You know, Labour said, actually, we need to do the same kind of thing that they do in many other countries, which is let women compare their salaries across organisations and across companies. That would mean that you could see quite quickly if you had those kinds of disparities, and we could sort them out, because when you've got fair pay that actually reflects people's contributions, their levels of experience, the talent that they bring to a company or an organisation, that's good for everyone. You know, it's not just good for those women, it's good for the whole organisation.
This report today, it says 63% of women are worn out trying to tell us about it, you say, trying to do it all. A fifth of mothers said, Annalise, the pressure to be a good parent negatively affected their mental health. And this ties in with, well, doing it all. You know what it's like doing it all. You're a mum of two, being a super mum, working, being mum as well. Sometimes what I'm trying to get at is the destructive element.
Yeah, look, a lot of let's be real. I mean, my husband is an absolutely fantastic father. We both work full time. Most of the domestic responsibilities fall to me, and I can say that that is very often the way it is in society still, that women tend to do a lot of that. And we've got a long way to go in changing that. I don't mean to shame my husband, he pulls his weight in other ways, but it is a cultural norm still.
Well, that's right. And in fact, during the COVID crisis, we saw even more pressure on a lot of women because we saw overwhelmingly that they were the ones who had to look after the kids when they weren't at school or when they weren't at nursery. And of course, we've still got schools that have got issues now with lots of kids with COVID. I was at one in my patch yesterday when 30 children were off. Now, someone's got to look after them, and overwhelmingly, it tends to be the women who do that. I mean, we do think around this that there's a lot that can be done actually to support parents as well as changing the culture. You know, you look at parental leave, for example. Very, very few dads are taking parental leave. You know, we've said with a Labour government we would be fixing that system. We would be making sure that it was more of a choice than it is at the moment, because right now, you know, a lot of families look at that and they think, well, it's just not going to stack up financially for the dad to be doing an equal share of that caring. And that kind of leads to a particular pattern being put in place from the very beginning, and we've got to shake that up.
Look, lastly, Annalise Dodds, this year's International Women's Day falls when really all of our hearts and minds are very much on the brutal war unfolding in Ukraine. We're hearing reports of women and children being targeted by sex trafficking gangs and the like, as they're at their most vulnerable. What more can the UK do to protect women on International Women's Day stuck in this unbearable situation?
That's absolutely horrendous to hear. I mean, we've also had reports, of course, of women having to give birth in bomb shelters. I mean, just really horrendous scenes that we've all been hearing about and learning about. I mean, there is more that needs to be done. You know, we have been, as the Labour Party, standing with the UK government, with our NATO allies against that Russian aggression, quite rightly supporting those Ukrainian forces. But we think that we can be doing more, first around Putin's finances. You know, if we choke off that economic support, that will make a really big difference. Just late last night, we were trying to force the Conservative government to be closing the window for the Putin-linked oligarchs much more quickly. Now, they shouldn't have 18 months before we see where their money is stashed in London property. We could actually change that in a matter of days. That's what we wanted to achieve last night. Didn't manage to get the government to agree with us, but we'll keep pushing.
For your time today. Busy day for you today. She's the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities. Thank you very much indeed. We want to take up what you were saying, Annalise, now with one of our newspaper reviewers here, and that is Liz Kershaw. And Liz, the story is, you take it from The Sun today, and basically, as I pointed out in this survey, can women have it all?
I saw that and I was torn between that article, Women Worn Out, being super mums, and this one, double page spread in The Sun. Think you can't have it all, girls? Wrong, you can. I was brought up Irish matriarchs, you know what they're like. They're the power behind the throne, and brought up with the notion that nothing my brother could do wasn't open to me as well. But I remember when I became a mother, and it was like the 70s, and you can do this and you can go to university and you can have a thrusting career and you can also be a mother. And I remember becoming a mum and thinking I'd been duped. It was so hard, as you were saying, Isabel. You know, going to work and having young children as well. And I totally support women having equal opportunities. In fact, I think, you know, your sex should be invisible when it comes to the workplace. But I do think that motherhood is underrated, and I think it should be respected more and promoted more. And homemaking, you know, you're not a failure if you choose to not have a career and be a full-time mother. It's the bedrock of our society. And it's so important to the future. And also, we discussed last time I was on about, you know, the age of becoming a mother in the UK. was getting older and fewer, the birth rates in such decline, you know, because girls are having to choose between paying off their 50 grand university debt and getting a job and becoming a mum. I think motherhood should really be celebrated, encouraged through the tax system. I mean, I remember not long ago looking at I was once asked if I'd like to be an MP, and I said, not while I've got children of school age. So there's an issue there, you know, with ageism. So when you are older and you've got the experience, that's the time to do a job like that, but concentrate on being a mum. So I looked at, a few years ago, at the prominent female politicians in the world. Theresa May was our Prime Minister, no children. Angela Merkel never had children. Nicola Sturgeon never had children. And at the time, Ruth Davidson, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, well, she's now had a child with her partner, but she's given up politics to be a mum. I think it's very hard to do the two.
And the reality is, a lot of women or men, whoever it may be, would actually like to be able to look after their children, but that isn't valued. And all the emphasis is really, and we're forced to have two incomes in order to afford mortgages or rents or whatever.
Well, I don't agree with that,
People
Isabel.
don't have the choice to look after their own children if they want to.
Because in the past, in my grandparents' generation, they didn't have two incomes.
No, but it's changed now. You have to afford a cheaper house.
No, they were poorer then, Isabel, but the mother stayed at home. I'm not trying to go back to the dark ages. I'm just saying we should make the tax system, you know, whatever, value motherhood and reflect that. And then people could relax and do that, because it's just as important a job as being an executive. And Annalise Dodds, I think when you asked the question about why are female head teachers paid less than men, well, it's because, I think practically it's because they take time out of their careers to do the parenting, so they lose those years of building up their annual increments and the salaries. That must have... I mean, both my parents were head teachers, and I know that to be the case, so,
Yeah, well, then you've got the insight. I never thought of that, but I mean, I would have just thought the jobs offered, and if people go into it, they should be paid the same rate. Michael Portillo, sorry for leaving you on the side.
Am I allowed to talk about women?
Of course you are.
I just want to say that this would be a day when I remember my mother, who had 5 boys and a career. She didn't pursue a career all the time. There was a period when she looked after her children, but she was a magnificent woman. And I joined the Conservative Party more than 40 years ago because it was led by a woman who had 2 children.
Right, well, that's a good tribute. We want to start with you with Ukraine and these humanitarian passages. Kiev rejects Putin offer to let people flee into Russia. Well, I'm hearing different things on this. 1 minute he's not allowing anybody to flee into Russia, and here he's offering it. What's the situation?
Oh, who knows what the situation is, because everything out of Russia is lies. But we were talking earlier about the apparent peace terms coming out of Moscow and whether they should be treated with skepticism. Well, here's a reason why you might treat them with skepticism, because Putin offers humanitarian escape passages, 6 of them, of which 4 go through Russia or Belarus.
Straight into the arms
Russia,
of the
Belarus.
enemy.
I mean, can you imagine having been invaded by Russia, that you're told you can now go into Russia, where people are being repressed, where people are being misinformed, far from your home, and you have to make your home then in the country which has invaded you. So this is rightly dismissed as extraordinarily cynical. And it was accompanied by the failure of all the ceasefire offers that had been made by Russia. I believe actually that yesterday a few more people were able to get out than in previous days. I heard about 2,000 people getting out, I think, of Irpin, if I remember correctly. But still, the broad situation seems to be that the Russians talk about safe passageways, and actually what they do is they mortar and they shell.
Now, I want to know, you're going to start a real discussion amongst people now, because I want to know your opinion. You've taken an editorial in The Sun today by David Frost, who was the former Brexit secretary. He's saying, get real, get cracking on fracking. We talked about this yesterday, and our contributor felt that there was still no argument for fracking. Where do you stand?
Well, my argument is that we have to revisit all our previous assumptions. And I don't know how well based our previous assumptions were anyway. So we're driving towards something which is called net zero. So over a very brief period of time, we're trying to get rid of oil and gas and move on to renewables. Now, the problem with this is that the renewables so far are not entirely reliable because most of it is wind power, and wind power only operates when you have wind. We have a very limited nuclear policy. Nuclear is also carbon-free, but unfortunately we only have a very limited policy. And broadly speaking, in Britain, we're closing down our gas wells and closing down our oil fields, and certainly we're not developing any more. So I think all of this has to be revisited. And there's a particular moment coming where I think in coming days we're due to concrete over our fracking wells. So fracking is onshore gas which comes out of formations of rock on land. I can't think of anything madder than to concrete over gas wells.
But how do you go to the international world and how do you lecture India and China and Africa and everyone else and yet say we are staying committed to carbon fuel?
But wait a minute, I'm a bit tired of being lectured by others. We have been lectured by the European Union about going green, and what have they been doing? They've been making themselves 40% dependent on Russian gas. I mean, it was to me amazing to discover that the European Union was taking all this gas that had made itself so dependent that it is becoming more dependent when people in Britain, on the other hand, are being asked to make all these sacrifices to close down our gas industry and to close down our oil industry. Certainly time for a rethink.
Yeah, it was interesting. The Prime Minister yesterday, for the first time, hinting this new energy strategy, supply strategy would involve more drilling in the North Sea. So he's changing his tune a little bit.
He's very worried about this because the Conservative Party has got itself very, very committed to green policies, and they think there are votes to be lost. I would like the Conservative... I mean, if we're talking about votes, which is only part of it, but I'd like the Conservative Party to think very carefully that the metropolitan green vote is in London, where the Conservatives now have almost no seats, and the people who are quite worried about this are in the so-called red wall seats. The people who are worried about our restricted supply are in the red wall seats. So I think actually the politics for the Conservatives of making a change here make pretty good sense to me.
Just very quickly, Elizabeth, private health care, this is in the Telegraph. Patients' private care to be funded by the NHS. Explain that one.
Well, if you're now waiting more than 18 months for treatment, you'll be given a fund to go and buy it, and in the private sector, more than 300,000 people are facing waits now of more than a year compared to 1,600 before the pandemic. So Sajid Javid announced this yesterday, that he's musing over this. People are going to be offered these personalised healthcare packages so they can control their own budgets. It's just that it shows how desperate the situation is. I'm sure people will put their hands up and say, oh, this is privatisation of the NHS. But a lot of the NHS, let's not be hypocrites, is privatised anyway. All GPs are private companies, practices, ambulance services, social care services.
And one wonders if you're faced with hip pain or knee pain or whatever it is, would you care?
Well, my cousin, who's 75, has just paid £10,000 to have her knee done because she was told it'd be another 2 years. And when you, as you know, if you cannot sleep because you're in 24-hour constant pain like nothing you've ever imagined, you'll do anything, won't you?
So you're saying the trusts will be able to say, right, we've got like tokens, or we can give you a couple of £1,000 towards something. It's up to you.
Yeah.
You've got knee pain, sort it out whatever way you want. Through
go
physiotherapy,
off and buy your
whatever.
treatment. Yeah.
All that sort of thing. Guys, got to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.
Look, we've been talking about International Women's Day this morning. We're celebrating two women now who've helped to make a dramatic improvement to the lives of girls in Middlesbrough after it was found to be the worst place to grow up for girls just 6 years ago.
I'm going to speak to our North of England reporter Rachel Sweeney, who's on this one, live in Middlesbrough this morning. Rachel, over to you.
I'm absolutely thrilled to tell you that this charity has helped 600 girls in the last 4 years. They started in a spare room with 2 people. You saw some research that showed that it was the worst place to grow up for girls, Middlesbrough, and you just took it away from there.
Yeah, we decided that that wasn't the message that we wanted to give Middlesbrough girls, that they needed to know they weren't the most disadvantaged, but they had potential and they had value. So we started Rubies to give them that message.
And you do group sessions. What happens in these sessions?
Yeah, so our group sessions are in schools, in primary schools and secondary schools, and it's all about girls knowing their worth. It's about bringing out their skills and abilities.
It's International Women's Day. The best part of International Women's Day is women supporting other women. Are you doing anything special?
And we're actually part of a campaign at the moment called The Big Give, which is all about raising awareness and funds for women and girls organisations. So we're really proud to be part of that campaign.
Let's talk about Middlesbrough, because the research was terrible to read, 6 years ago. So this is the worst place to grow up if you're a girl. Do you think that's changed, and how has it changed?
I think that's definitely changing. It was really sad to read that in 2016, but already in just a few years, we're definitely seeing changes in Middlesbrough. There's investment, there's opportunity, and there's people starting to believe that people from Teesside can do whatever they want to do.
What are girls like when they approach you, and how do you see them change?
So girls come from a range of backgrounds, and they might be struggling with a range of issues. They might be struggling with things like poverty, also things like anxiety. That's particularly increased since COVID. And sometimes when we first meet girls, they don't want to get involved, they don't trust us. But we're really focused on helping them be the best they can be. So we work hard to support them, to gain their trust, and it's great to see them flourishing.
You can see by the smile on your face how proud you are of what you've achieved. How has Ruby's developed over the years?
So Ruby's has been going for 4 years as a charity. We started with just myself and my co-founder, and now we have 5 part-time staff and about 15 volunteers. And we could not have done it without the support of people in Middlesbrough, and particularly the women of Middlesbrough have supported us a lot.
Future plans?
Our future plans are definitely to expand our project. We'd really like to do some work with girls on a one-to-one, which is more therapeutic, and to have girls groups all across Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland.
And to anyone in Middlesbrough watching this right now, what message do you have for them?
Well, obviously we believe that the girls and boys of Middlesbrough have great potential, but we're focusing on the girls. We want them to know that they have worth, and we want them to know that no matter what barriers they face, they can overcome them, and that we're here to support them.
International Women's Day, a fantastic day to introduce you to Liz here at Ruby's. If you're a girl living in Middlesbrough, don't be afraid to get in touch. They are here to help.
Thank you. Lovely to hear. Thank you very much indeed. 4 minutes now before 8 o'clock. Still to come, we're going to be speaking to a rabbi trying to set up transport for the refugees from Ukraine, OK? All the news, all the headlines, top of the hour.
Good morning. Another chilly start out there. It will turn milder as we go through the next few days. A brisk wind, though, making it feel even colder, despite a fair bit of sunshine, certainly in the east. But further west, this weather front is slowly approaching, and that will increase the cloud and eventually bring some showers. For the time being, though, high pressure is still controlling things, and that will bring most places a dry, fine day. A touch of frost out there this morning, but plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, eastern England and most of Scotland. Across Wales, southwest England, Northern Ireland, we are seeing the clouds steadily increase, and here are a few showers just trickling into Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and across much of Northern Ireland during the afternoon. The breeze will be pretty noticeable, but it is slowly bringing milder air. So temperatures up to double figures across the Midlands and Wales, southwest England, 8 or 9 in Belfast, and only 8 or 9 in the eastern parts of England, despite a fair bit of sunshine. There will be that noticeable wind also. We'll see some of that rain edging across Scotland through this evening, so turning damp for a time, but it does tend to clear away before the next area of rain edges into Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the early hours. Temperatures won't be anything like as low as the night just gone. We're generally well above freezing thanks to more cloud and that brisk wind. It will make for a different feel, certainly on Wednesday morning. It won't feel anything like as cold, but again, for most of England and Wales, Wednesday's dry and bright. A wet day, though, for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. This line of rain, it's a weather front, it's just not moving very far. Some of that rain could be heavy as well. Eventually, it trickles into West Wales, southwest England. But for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, tomorrow is another dry day where we see some hazy sunshine. In the east, we could easily get into the teens, and temperatures ticking up further as we go through the week. We'll see some patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, but a lot of dry weather in the east, but often quite windy. As I said, those temperatures starting to tick up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukrainian President Zelensky will make an historic address to the House of Commons this afternoon from besieged Kyiv.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 8th of March. This is GB Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
A very good morning to you. We're live across the whole world. We're on your TV, we're on your radio, we're online. And here's what's leading the news this morning.
President Zelensky will address MPs in the House of Commons today at 5 p.m. And in a call with Liz Truss late last night, his foreign minister called for new sanctions on Russia.
The world is watching. The words of the Prime Minister ahead of his meeting with the leaders of the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland and Slovakia, as his government comes under increasing pressure to grant safety to those fleeing Ukraine.
We'll be speaking to our reporter, Paul Hawkins, who is in Chelm for us this morning. That's near to the Ukrainian border.
This bus for Poland or this bus for Germany? We're at a registration centre where Ukrainians are making some big life decisions.
And we'll be talking to the Russian countess who is married to the man dubbed Putin's banker. We'll be joined by Alexander Tolstoy here in the studio shortly.
And of course, it is International Women's Day. We'll be asking you this morning, let us know about any of the women in your life who have inspired you. Get in touch, email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us
A
at
very
GBnews.
important female in my life right now, and for the past 12 years, has been my adopted dog, Maggie. There you
Not
are.
your pet day.
But you know, before I went out this morning, I stroked her and I kissed her.
Yeah.
As she lay at the foot of my bed, and I thought, loyal, friendly,
Yeah,
fantastic.
missing the point though.
If I had
Much
a
as
wife
you
like
love your dog.
that would be that would have
the
been
point
brilliant.
there, Eamonn.
That would have been brilliant. So
yeah.
tweet us, it's at GB News. Get in touch, tell us your story. Who are the women in your life, and who, like for instance, in cinematic history, women that, you know, there's going to be a film, there's going to be a biopic of Lucille Ball this year as well. And, you know, people like Marilyn Monroe or Betty Davis or Betty Grable. Doesn't matter who it happens to be.
Or as Portillo said, Maggie Thatcher, Michelle Obama, whoever it may be. Let us know who those female icons are. Okay, in a historic move today, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky will make a live video address to the House of Commons about the ongoing crisis.
Boris Johnson promised the government will go as far as it can with sanctions ahead of meeting the 4 country leaders.
Meanwhile, Poland has announced plans to set up a £1.3 billion fund to help Ukrainian refugees after receiving more than 1 million people.
Well, watching that live for us and seeing the effect and maybe how that money could be spent. Let's go to our reporter Paul Hawkins in Poland. Paul, that money obviously very much needed and could be easily allocated.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, Eamonn. Good morning to you and Isabel from the Holmes Refugee Registration Centre, about 20 kilometres from the border. This is quite often the first point where many of the Ukrainians coming across the border give their details and try to make those plans, which can only come into effect thanks to money like that that's being made available by the Polish government. In fact, these buses at the moment, that's the kind of thing that money will pay for. This one is heading for Warsaw. This one's heading for Krakow. This one over here has come all the way from Germany. That one's going to Hanover and is leaving in about sort of 5 or 10 minutes. We're told there's 49 people on board that bus heading for Germany. These two heading for Poland. And remember, many Ukrainians have never left Ukraine before. They don't speak Polish, they don't speak German. They can take up employment. There's going to be a huge issue with the language barrier, so big challenges for many Ukrainians. We can speak to, just as one dog sees another here, of course, there are lots of animals travelling with people. We've seen a few cats inside as well today. But anyway, we can speak to one man now who's leading a group of Ukrainians on their way to Germany. His name is Valentin. Valentin, thank you for speaking to us. Valentin doesn't speak much English, so again we're going to use a translator. Valentin, why have you decided to leave Ukraine?
Справа в тому, що у нас дуже є великі групи людей, це насамперед дітей і
We have a lot of groups with children and with mothers. That's why.
Батьки знаходяться зараз у воєнізованих українських формуваннях як члени АТО.
The parents of these children, you know, is a member of territorial defense, is a member of
Я сам спочатку бойових дій, як член добровільного військового формування, брав участь 6 ночей у патрулюванні з автоматом своїми колегами вулиць міста.
Since the first day of the war, I was a member of territorial defense, and we was staying in a patrol with a gun and to defend our city. It's a city of Novograd-Volynski. It's the place when the Ukrainian famous poet Lesya Ukrainka was born, and also it's a big city near Zhytomyr. It's a part of Zhytomyr region.
Have the Russians been attacking it?
Росіяни атакували вже Новоградщину?
Новоградщину ні, але вони атакували Овруч, атакували Корстень багато разів.
They also was attacked the Ovruch, Korостyn, Malen, Zhytomyr, Chernihiv. It's the cities of the Zhytomyr region. But the next it will be our city, Novograd-Volynski.
Тому, коли випала нагода
That's why we had the opportunity to collect the big group of school who was a member of international educational program, because we created like last year's. Yesterday at 5 we was on the border Doroguz-Yagotin and was in at 5. At 12 we crossed the border and we entered the Poland last night. In one by the night we was in this center in Holmes.
And Poland has announced lots of money for more help for the Ukrainian people. How generous have they? I mean, what's his reaction to that?
Я хочу сказати велике спасибі нашим польським друзям.
I would like to say many thankful for accommodation, for free transportation for Ukrainians, because it was for us it's so important and also the foods and everything. It will be. Now we are waiting for our colleagues from Germany, from Wiesenthal. In a few hours we're gonna proceed into our way to Germany, Wiesenthal.
Там будуть розміщені посім'я по родинам.
the children will be connected with families, with the families of German families. It's mostly it's children and mothers. It's about 95%.
And is he worried about the women's safety? There are concerns for women, and that they're vulnerable, especially if they've got children with them.
А ви переживаєте за безпеку матерів і дітей зараз?
Ну, звичайно.
Yes, we worry because I am leading the group, because I think the documents, because as a leader of the group. That's why I'm proceeding my way to Byzantine, and I will back in 3 days back to Ukraine to send the second group of the Ukrainians. Because it's true, in Poland it's about more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees is already in Poland, but it's too much for Polish government and for Polish people. It's why we need to to do something and send the Ukrainians to other countries as well.
And just quickly, a word on what he thinks about the way Vladimir Putin's behaved.
Що ви думаєте взагалі про поведінку Путіна, що ви про нього можете сказати?
Що можна думати про людину, у якого, вибачте, дах поїхав вже давно?
He's crazy. Vladimir Putin, he's a dictator with his partner, with Lukashenko. It's the same two dictators.
В принципі, коли мене мої колеги з Німеччини запитали 24 числа,
when my colleagues from Germany asked me 24th February, on the first day of the war, about the behavior of Lukashenko and Putin, they say that we destroyed and that we're gonna lose these Lukashenko and Putin as the dictators. Because Putin wants to rebuild former Soviet Union and also the Russian Empire during the Tsar. But we are living in the 21st century. We need to understand it's impossible.
Valentine, thank you so much for speaking to
Дуже
us.
дякую, пане Валентине, за...
Thank you, Valentine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is Valentine, then, who's leading a group of Ukrainians on their way to Germany. He's only 71 years young, but he's certainly not letting that stop him trying to help his fellow countrymen and fellow countrywomen, I should say, try to make a new life outside of Ukraine, at least temporarily.
The fact that he says he's going to make that journey and come back to take another load in a few days' time goes to show he doesn't think the numbers are going to be relenting anytime soon. Is that your impression? Because you've been there, 3, 4, 5 days now? Are you seeing people just continuing to steadily come across the border?
Yeah, it depends where you are on the border, and it depends on what mode of transport. So we're at the train station, and a train full of Ukrainians comes in, and then they offload, and then it's quiet at the station for a bit, and then you have to wait another half an hour, 45 minutes for another train to come in. But if you're at the Dorohusk border crossing, there was a steady stream over the weekend. It was a little bit quieter yesterday, so it comes and goes in fits and starts in terms of the volume of people that are coming across the border. But one thing we can definitely say is that the statistics do bear out that the numbers aren't going down at all, and that it is going to grow. The UN says that eventually 4 million people will leave Ukraine. So those numbers are only going to go up, and this is very quickly becoming, if not, it is already Europe's biggest refugee crisis. So it's only going to get harder. The volunteer I was speaking to at the station yesterday, Monica, she said, of course we want, she's from Poland, from Holmes, she said, of course they want to house as many Ukrainians as they can, they want to house as much as they can, but there is a limit to what they can do, so the numbers are only going to get bigger, and in terms of finding semi-permanent and permanent accommodation, there is a big challenge there, and that is why, even though Ukrainians want to stay in Poland, they want to stay as close to Ukraine as possible. You can understand why they would want to do that. They are having to go further afield. We've just spoken as well to one family who want to head all the way to Spain, and now we haven't heard of any transport that's heading for Spain. They're not put off by making the 3,000-kilometre journey.
Interesting. Really good to keep hearing those stories. Paul, thank you so much for all that you are doing there for us at GB News.
And your feedback today coming in on social media, Jeffrey from Buckingham talking about Russia. Surely boycotting Russia is hurting the people of Russia rather than Putin. But yeah, I suppose that's the point, because they put the pressure then on their leader. This will have an adverse effect in the long run, will only prove his point that the West is the enemy.
Michael talks about Russia lying, but how do we know that Ukraine's telling the whole truth? Stan says last night the Russians were bombing residential property, regardless of whether people were in them or not. People trying to leave their vehicles were shot, the vehicles wrecked, their belongings taken, and still we do nothing. Graham says, interesting conversation on products manufactured in Russia. It's not always easy to gather this information. And then he suggests that a deodorant branded in Tesco might well be produced in Russia. Lots of response about McDonald's and Starbucks as well.
Mark Tilley says, even with sanctions on Russia, we in the UK are suffering more with fuel prices. Petrol is only around 50 cents a litre in Russia. 13 minutes past 8 o'clock. Meanwhile, the UK Defence Minister Ben Wallace says Poland may be drawn into the direct line of fire from Russia if it provides fighter jets to Ukraine, but that the world would support them.
Well, let's get more on this situation from Chip Chapman. He's former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence and a regular on our breakfast show. Very good morning. Lovely to see you. Let's talk about that point then, first of all, from Ben Wallace, Defence Secretary. We heard, didn't we, about this deal in which the Americans would backfill these fighter jets that Poland were offering to the Ukraine because their pilots would be able to fly them. There are risks associated with this, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think firstly you've got to understand the political situation of Poland. The language that Putin used prior to the invasion about a steady statehood didn't exist in Ukraine was exactly the same language that Stalin used prior to the invasion of Poland in 1939. So for Poland, everything is existential to do with Russia. Then you have to look at what this actually means in terms of transfer and substitution. So there are only 3 countries in the Warsaw Pact who operate former Soviet Union aircraft. Poland is one of those. The 2 particular type of aircraft are the MiG-29 and the Sukhoi 25. One is what we call a mud mover, close air support, and one is a defensive counter-air fighter to win the battle over Kyiv or wherever it may be. Of course, there are risks, but Putin has already taken a maximalist approach to everything so far. Concede to my demands or else, for his security concerns, demilitarize or else, don't join NATO to Finland or Sweden or else, don't establish a no-fly zone or else, don't transfer fighters or else. There comes a time when you have to sort of stand up to the plate. It's only D+12 at the moment. And do I think he will attack a NATO country? I probably don't. But Poland is a sovereign country and can make its own decisions.
Chip, you talk about attacking a NATO country. It depends how you attack it, though. There are various ways of doing that in this day and age. And you're a former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. What about the home front? Are we prepared for dirty tricks from Russia?
Well, one of the interesting things so far is we generally talk about multi-domain operations, and we've seen land, sea and air operations, but we've seen very little in the other 2 domains that they talk about now. The first one being the cyber domain and whether there's an escalation there. And the 5th one is the space domain. So there could be cyber attacks of a inordinate nature on Western countries, infrastructure, power plants, things like that. Now, that could be deemed to be a NATO Article 5 attack. An attack on one is an attack on another or everyone. But that is always a political decision. The space one is interesting because the way that the Ukrainians have fought means they've got incredible intelligence, probably from the Americans. And the Russians could blind, dazzle, jam, or even an extremist use anti-satellite missiles against the Americans. So there's a calculus there for Russia as well. Do they want to go down that line in terms of cyber attacks or space attacks, or to do attacks on the home front, as I think you're suggesting? Now, of course, Russia, for example, is a member of the OPCW, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. That didn't stop it doing the attacks on Skripal in 2018.
Talk to you, we're day 14 today, and for me, you know, in covering this story, the trademark, the hallmark, I suppose, of this war, more than any war in recent memory, is the civilian cost in all of this. We're hearing that the Russians are just continuing to shell civilians who are trying to evacuate, these humanitarian corridors, even being littered with landmines. The war crime allegations absolutely racking up. Is this going to be, do you think, the signature of this invasion of Ukraine?
It will be one of the factors. I don't think it's the signature. The signature will be that Putin is not as strong as he would like to be seen, and that the military of Russia is a bit of a Pyrrhic military. But in terms of the sort of element there of the refugees and the civilians, of course, this plays to our emotions, and that's quite right, because there are categories of non-combatants in warfare. Yeah, the very young, the very old, the infirm, the clergy are all those people who should not be targeted. But in terms of Russia's approach, they take the view that there is no limitations. And I keep saying that it's not armies that fight wars, it's nations that fight wars. And so from Putin's perspective, there's almost no limitation. It's crush them, but crush them is not a viable strategy. And all Putin really has to offer at the moment is his brutality.
Chip, we'll leave it there. Really appreciate it. You were listening and watching. Chip Chapman, former advisor to CENTCOM and former head of counterterrorism at the MOD. With that, we take a break, and we're meeting the rabbi on a mission to help those in Ukraine, and he's drawing his inspiration on this International Women's Day from his mother and what she went through fleeing from Nazi Germany. After this.
Good morning. Another chilly start out there. It will turn milder as we go through the next few days. A brisk wind, though, making it feel even colder, despite a fair bit of sunshine, certainly in the east. But further west, this weather front is slowly approaching, and that will increase the cloud and eventually bring some showers. For the time being, though, high pressure is still controlling things, and that will bring most places a dry, fine day. A touch of frost out there this morning, but plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, eastern England and most of Scotland. Across Wales, southwest England, Northern Ireland, we are seeing the clouds steadily increase, and here a few showers just trickling into Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and across much of Northern Ireland during the afternoon. The breeze will be pretty noticeable, but it is slowly bringing milder air. So temperatures up to double figures across the Midlands and Wales, southwest England, 8 or 9 in Belfast, and only 8 or 9 in the eastern parts of England, despite a fair bit of sunshine. There will be that noticeable wind also. We'll see some of that rain edging across Scotland through this evening, so turning damp for a time, but it does tend to clear away before the next area of rain edges into Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the early hours. Temperatures won't be anything like as low as the night just gone. We're generally well above freezing thanks to more cloud and that brisk wind. It will make for a different feel, certainly on Wednesday morning. It won't feel anything like as cold, but again, for most of England and Wales, Wednesday's dry and bright. A wet day, though, for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. This line of rain, it's a weather front, it's just not moving very far. Some of that rain could be heavy as well. Eventually it trickles into West Wales, southwest England, but for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, tomorrow is another dry day where we see some hazy sunshine. In the east, we could easily get into the teens, and temperatures ticking up further as we go through the week. We'll see some patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, but a lot of dry weather in the east, but often quite windy. As I said, those temperatures starting to tick up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.23 is the time. Latest news update is this.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky stressing once again that he won't abandon the capital, Kyiv, saying he'll stay as long as it takes to win the war. In his latest video address, the 44-year-old says the Russians are having a nightmare after underestimating the resolve of the Ukrainian people.
He will give his first ever address to Britain's MPs. Later, the Ukrainian president will appear by video link in the House of Commons. That's going to happen at 5 o'clock, when he's expected to renew demands for a no-fly zone.
Women and girls caught in the invasion of Ukraine need crucial protection, according to the Disasters Emergency Committee. The aid agency have marked International Women's Day by warning that there's an increased risk of gender-based violence and abuse for women who are fleeing the disaster.
Residents of a high-rise building which caught fire in East London yesterday say they'd previously complained about not being able to hear the fire alarms and the building's stay-put policy. At least 20 fire engines and 125 firefighters tackled the blaze, which was on the 17th floor at the Relay building in Whitechapel High Street. One person was taken to hospital and others were treated at the scene.
It's hoped that pregnant women and new mothers will be able to have better access to mental health services as part of a new project. The scheme, called Amplifying Maternal Voices, has been set up by a couple of charities and it will run for at least 2 years nationwide.
School leaders are warning there is still a very long way to go to tackle the pay difference between male and female head teachers. The unions say there's evidence the salary gap has got worse over the last 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
You go.
We've seen an influx of people pitching in to help those in Ukraine. And we're going to meet now a really, really interesting man. He's a rabbi, Dr. Jonathan Romain. What he's doing is he's setting up a transport charity.
Yeah, this is all inspired. It's called Ukraine Transport, and it's inspired by Kinder Transport, which benefited his mother as she was fleeing from the Holocaust. A very warm welcome to the programme, Rabbi. Thank you for joining us this morning. What an amazing tribute to your mother on this International Women's Day, and of course hugely valuable to people fleeing the scenes in Ukraine. How did this idea come to you?
Well, initially it was a very small idea that like everybody, appalled by what was going on. My wife and I, our children have left home. We had spare room, and I thought, right, we'd volunteer to open our room to a refugee from Ukraine. And I found that the organisations I rang weren't doing anything. For whatever reason. I think they are leaping into action now, but at that time they weren't. So I said, right, okay, I'll volunteer to sort of be a focal point for people who want to offer. And that was partly, as you said, for humanitarian reasons. You just can't see all those pictures without your heart bleeding. But also because I suppose I have a historic memory from my own family, because as you said, my mother came over here from Leipzig in Germany, Nazi Germany at the time. She was one of the lucky ones in that she came on the Kinder Transport when Britain opened its arms and took in 10,000 Jewish children. And if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be talking to you. And I think actually for a lot of Jewish people, there is that sort of memory of that we were once refugees, and now is the time for us to step up and help our generation cope with this latest trauma. And so really I sort of let it know that I was organising people who wanted to offer not just a home, but even a roof, a loft, a spare room, whatever, a mobile house. And I was just quite overwhelmed by the number of people who've been writing in and saying, yes, we'd like to help in some way. People are just desperately sad at what's going on. What we really want is, of course, to stop the war. We can't do that. That's not in our power. But we can make a difference to an individual Ukrainian family, or a man, a woman, a family with a dog, whatever, and try and help those particular people. And literally offers of help have been flooding in, and throughout the country, from Kent to Aberdeen, people of all faith, people of no faith, and it's just been wonderful and heartwarming. And at a time when really the news is so bleak and dire, it's been really it's been really great to not only get the offers, but the stories people tell with them. Like there was one lady who said, I'm 84, I've got a cataract operation next week, but I do have a spare room, so I'll help somebody. Or there was another person who wrote an email saying, well, my husband's got quite severe kidney problems. He's on dialysis. And I thought the email was going to end by saying, so I'd love to help, but can't. But instead, she said, so why don't you send to me a Ukrainian family who've also got dialysis problems, and I can take them both to hospital at the same time? People really going extra mile.
People, their hearts are open. The memory's ingrained in you. It's part of your DNA. And then you get to border control and you're asked, where's your visa? And I just want your sort of view on that, about what we're doing to accept refugees. And also tell us about your mum, what age she was. Did she have to have papers? Was she accompanied when she was a child?
Well, on your first question, at the moment, the government hasn't quite made up its mind, to put it gently, as to what its policy is going to be. As you know, it's only allowing people with immediate family, Ukrainian family, here already. And I think a lot of British people would like them to widen that and to let anyone in need come. I mean, the European Union has waived the need for visas completely. And also, amazingly, they've said that Ukrainian refugees can have free travel on the railways. So that if you are stuck in a camp in a Polish-Ukrainian border, how do you get to France or Belgium? Well, you can just get on a train. You may not have any money. You may have left your credit card behind, but you can actually make that journey to family elsewhere. And it would be really good if we did something similar and allowed people in, because I think so far only 50 visas have been given. Now, of course, back in the day, by which I mean 1939, just before war started, Britain, they did give visas for these 10,000 children, but they came unaccompanied. My mother came alone, she was 11 years old. She was coming to a new country, a new language. She ended up in Devon, where a Quaker family, and by the way, the Quakers and the Christadelphians, lots and lots of people helped in those days, but the Quakers and the Christadelphians made it part of their mission to help the Kinders transport, and all credit to them. And in fact, I've had some emails from a Quaker family saying, my grandfather took in children from the Kinders transport, so I want to replicate his act in my time too. She was actually one of the lucky ones, because although she was traumatized as a child and always had a sense of insecurity throughout her life, she got out, and her uncles, aunts, cousins, they did not survive.
Gosh, terribly sobering, and a really stark reminder of the importance of acting and being open-hearted. Dr. Jonathan Romain, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
And good luck with Ukraine transport.
Yeah, good
Thank
luck.
you very much.
Let us know how you get on.
Yeah. With that, we will take a break, and we'll be looking through the papers there on this Tuesday. Michael Portillo and Liz Kershaw with their views, and they've certainly had you talking so far with their appearances this morning. More of that after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 8:34, time to go through the papers this morning. We're joined by Liz Kershaw and Michael Portillo. We're going to start this review with a story about the Zelensky address, historic address, Michael, that will be taking place in the Commons this evening at 5 o'clock. And just explain to people at home how unprecedented this is.
Well, yes, it certainly didn't happen in my day. I think it's not happened at all. So he's going to appear on these television screens. The House of Commons is going to be in session. I think it's absolutely brilliant to break precedent and do this for the first time. Zelensky has emerged as a brilliant figure. I mean, he's such a wonderful symbol of the determination and defiance of his people. He won a landslide victory, an immensely popular president. He was a comedian, and people say that as though that means that he's not bright or something. He's actually a very intelligent man who knows a great deal about
comedians
communication.
Often are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He knows a great deal about communication, and I think he has become a sort of global hero. And I wanted partly just to pay tribute to him, and also to say how I envy anybody who is a member of Parliament today, because they will be present at this historic event. Why does it matter? Because there are a few democratic institutions as old and as venerable as the House of Commons. And what this struggle is about democracy versus authoritarianism and dictatorship. And for this very popular elected president to be addressing a democratic institution in Britain, I think absolutely helps to accentuate what it is all about, and how it's not just the freedom of the Ukrainian people which is in peril, but also other peoples in Eastern Europe. And eventually, if freedom isn't safe, then it's not safe anywhere.
Last week, Vadim Pushtaiko, who's the ambassador to Ukraine, was given a standing ovation in the Commons. And people don't normally clap, do they? That in itself was quite unusual. Do you expect to see similar sort of scenes again today?
Yes, I do. And I think it will be a very emotional occasion as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people are overcome and are wiping away tears. He's a very good communicator. I think it will have an enormous impact. And it will increase the government's resolve. If the government now needs to do some very difficult things which affect the cost of living, we were talking about this earlier, then I think they'll be given more resolve, because the House of Commons will, I think, rise so much in support of the President of Ukraine.
We should just say...
Sounds like you'd love to be there.
Yeah,
I'd love
you could probably get in the public gallery if you wanted to go along to that. But I should just stress to anyone at home who wants to watch that, we'll be giving full coverage of that on GB News, and that's at 5 o'clock today.
Elizabeth, this is the Daily Mail, page 23.
Citated while Charles is visiting Ireland and William and Kate are on their tour of the Caribbean.
Gotcha.
Then it's all about should Charles be out of the country and William at the same time, and the Queen unable to do her constitutional duties, step up Prince Andrew.
Get out of it.
That's the prospect.
That can't happen.
Could I just say on this International Women's Day,
Yes.
there is only one contender for that
Princess
job.
Anne.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it does go on to discuss that. Princess Anne, although we did amend the Acts of Succession recently, in recent years, so that, for instance, Princess Charlotte has the same right status as her brothers. Somehow Princess Anne has been overlooked, as Michael and I were discussing it earlier. It's clearly just an omission, a mistake, because she is a formidable woman. She's a tour de force. She's hard-working. She's, utterly candid, to put it mildly.
She's not going to drop the ball.
No, so let's promote her quickly, eh?
Yeah, some of the civil servants or whatever should be sorted.
Very quickly, there's another royal story just underneath it, which I think is really interesting. When Prince Charles is crowned, when he becomes the monarch, he will have reached a certain age, and he could be the first king or queen ever to be crowned wearing spectacles. Ooh. Just because he's the oldest one, I think, ever to have been.
How do you put glasses and a crown on at the same time?
I don't know.
That might be a bit.
I just
tricky.
thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Nice bit of trivia. I like that. Michael, you want to bring up Partygate. This has been covered in the Express today. Lots of people saying that, I mean, tragic as it is, this war has been a God save for Boris's premiership.
Yeah, I mean, the first God save was the Metropolitan Police, who said their investigation had to take precedence over the revelations in the Sue Gray report, so that kicked the whole thing into the long grass. Now the war has come along, and I want to pay tribute to Boris, actually. I think Boris has done pretty well during this war. I think he's been a good voice for the United Kingdom. But another tribute would be to Keir Starmer, because Keir Starmer has said that there has to be unity during this crisis. Therefore, when Keir Starmer has been asked recently whether he's still demanding that Boris should resign over Partygate, Starmer has refused to endorse his previous position. He's refused to repeat it. So it rather looks, I mean, it's maybe premature, but it rather looks to me as though Partygate is over. I mean, are we really going to get rid of our Prime Minister over attending parties?
No.
When we're seeing Ukraine overrun by Russian tanks? It seems to me a bit far-fetched. We did get rid of Margaret Thatcher, by the way, when we were about to go to war in Kuwait against Iraq. So there are precedents, but I hope we won't be that daft twice.
There will be people, probably not GB News viewers or listeners, but there will be people who will say, look, this is still important because it is all linked. It's about truth at the top, and obviously Putin being the big truth denier. But I think Eamonn and I were just talking. We went to an event yesterday. Angela Rayner, Rishi Sunak were there, and it was quite clear that there was a sort of mutual respect and like between them. Yeah. And hearing you saying that, as a proudly blue Conservative former member of the cabinet, talking about wanting to give dues to Sir Keir Starmer, I think people like to hear that, and I think that we don't talk about that enough. That there is this esprit between the parties when it comes to the big issues.
Well, I made a post-political career by trying to be objective and pay tribute to people who did well on both sides, and I hope what might even bring that idea to GB News. You never know.
There we go.
Right there, you heard it here first. Now, on the menu today, whatever you're planning for breakfast, lunch, brunch even, or dinner, what are people not eating? Young adults in particular, Liz?
Can I just quickly say, I think it's a good idea that the West stops beating each other up, different sides, and unites. And if there's one great outcome of this whole horrible threat and conflict, it will be that we get our priorities right. Anyway, Michael's, the list of items, Michael's is Zelensky address, Partygate ends, and another important story about the health service. Mine's Prince Andrew, Ed Sheeran and Spotted Dick. So we're on to it now. And these are the foods that young people have never experienced, don't relish, because they've never tasted them, don't enjoy.
Well, I'll tell you, you talk about young people. I mean, this
one beside me. She's hardly in the...
Steady on. Steady on.
Yeah.
Last time you questioned my age, I might have accidentally sworn, so let's not go there.
Well,
she says she's never had steak Diane, doesn't know what it is.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Have you ever had spotted dick, Isabel?
I've
There's
heard
a question
of
I never thought I'd ask.
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Right. Well, gammon with pineapple ring. These are all 70s staples out there. You went to somebody's house for a dinner party, you might have gammon with pineapple ring, you might have Black Forest gatto.
Yes.
Arctic roll. Now, that's another one. Now, everybody, that was a real treat.
I still have Arctic roll.
Yeah, well, I do, because my grandma invented this dessert pudding called Suisse Delice. And that were in Rochdale. So I and we loved it, and I recreated it for my kids.
And what is Suisse Delice?
So they're like, Mum, this is fantastic, what's in it? So it's like a sliced up Arctic roll, layered, and in between the layers, fruit salad, i.e. tinned fruit cocktail.
Yeah.
Do you remember everybody used to fight? There was one red cherry in the tin and everybody fought over it. So you layer it with that, then you pour, not your fresh cream, Eamonn.
Evaporated
carnation milk.
Yeah, ideal milk.
And then some whipped. There's another tinned thing that's even thicker that you put that on the top. Anyway, they'd never had it. I said, we grew up. So they were saying, this is great. So the next time I produced spam sandwiches.
Oh, no, stop. Oh.
Yeah. I never did liver and onions. I used to love liver and onions. Black pudding, I have it like 3 mornings a week.
Do you?
Yeah, yeah. It's good for the blood, Isabel, because that's what it is.
It is blood, isn't it?
Yeah. Haggis, I eat haggis.
Yeah, haggis is good.
Yeah. So
but anyway, it's a good list. It's a very interesting list there.
Yeah.
Bubble and squeak. Surely everyone still has bubble and squeak after Christmas.
We didn't have bubble and squeak in Ireland. What is it? Cabbage and
potatoes and sprouts.
Well, it's
all
just
mashed
whatever's
up
left
together,
over
onions.
after Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
We have what's called champ, which is you call them spring onions and mashed potato.
Oh, lovely.
I love that. Yeah.
That's what it is. Lovely. So I hope that's got you licking your lips there. Michael, online consultations, video appointments with the doctors, do they work, do they not?
There's been some research, and for many people, they don't work. I don't find this at all surprising, do you? I mean, how can a doctor really take in a patient when you're only seeing a little bit of that patient on a screen? You want to see how the patient is moving, walking. You want to see details like whether the patient is sweating, panting, things that are not easy to see on a screen. Anyway, of course, for some people, if you live in a remote area and you want to make a quick check with the doctor, on screen is absolutely right. But I'm pleased to say that it looks like on-screen appointments have pretty much fallen away. I mean, I think we feared they might become a permanent thing where doctors would sort of keep patients at bay. But it appears now that only a very small minority of appointments are online, and the research says, for many people that they're not suitable, particularly for elderly people, they're unlikely to be suitable. So I think on the whole it's a good news story because we're moving in the right direction. We're getting back to doctors seeing patients face to face.
Okay. Michael
Stay
Portillo.
healthy. Stay healthy, both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure, Michael Portillo and Liz Kershaw.
Thank you
very
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Top stories, let's bring you up to date with the time at 9:15.
Ukraine's announced that the first civilian evacuation corridors have started from the city of Sumy and Irpin. The Russian Defense Ministry's claimed again that humanitarian corridors in Kharkiv, Mariupol and Kharkiv, as well as the capital Kiev, have opened.
A British-Ukrainian man is helping to evacuate refugees across the Polish border using a London black cab. The 31-year-old has already transported around 80 people, including expectant women, the elderly, and even a 9-month-old baby.
In other news, residents of a high-rise building which caught fire in East London yesterday say they'd previously complained about not being able to hear the fire alarms or were aware of the building's stay-put policy. At least 20 fire engines and 125 firefighters tackled the 17th floor blaze at the Relay building on Whitechapel High Street. One person was taken to hospital and others were treated at the scene.
There's a warning employees in Britain could be facing the sharpest decline in real income since the 1970s. A think tank, the Resolution Foundation, estimates a fall of 4% per working household this financial year. That's around £1,000.
Health Secretary Sajid Javid's expected to announce a list of reforms to NHS patient care today, including giving patients greater choice and control over the care that they receive, plus a bigger role for the NHS app.
The Amazon rainforest is reaching a tipping point where large swathes will begin to transform into savanna. A new paper warns 3/4 of the Amazon is showing decreased resilience against droughts and other adverse weather events, meaning it is less able to recover.
OK, let's return now to the Ukraine crisis. There are calls by some anti-war activists to stop the politicisation of Russian people and their culture.
Well, critics argue that there should be greater understanding of Russians, with many opposed to President Putin's actions and protesting the war at great personal risk.
Well, we can speak now to Countess Alexandra Tolstoy, whose ex-husband was once dubbed Putin's banker before he fell out with the Kremlin. A very warm welcome to you, Alexandra. And we should also state at this point that you are a relative, a distant relative. I think your father was a cousin of Leo Tolstoy, of course, who wrote Anna Karenina and War and Peace. So you have Russian culture deeply running through your veins. And I suppose not only does your heart break for what you're seeing in Ukraine, but also for what you're seeing for Russian culture and Russian people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously paramount is what I see happening in Ukraine, and any sufferings of the Russians is really nothing in comparison. And I don't think we should ever... I've seen some Russians whining about woe with us and everyone's picking on us. But, I mean, that's the way it's going to go. But I also think it's very important to distinguish between pre-revolutionary culture and what we're seeing now. What we're seeing now is a direct continuation of the Bolshevik regime. It hasn't gone, and all the great culture that came before the revolution, of course it shouldn't be cancelled, and we would only be really depriving ourselves, I think, if we start stopping this.
I suppose you have this unique perspective then of having seen what you describe as the continuation of the Bolshevik regime, in having been associated with it through your ex-husband, and an insight into the kind of oligarch world. You're looking at that from the outside now. You've seen the dark side of all of that. And just to explain to people how crazy... did you have contact with Putin during that period? Or you?
So I spent 8 years living, I would say, directly in Putin's circle. I was in the same room as him a couple of times, but more importantly, I lived in this oligarch's world. And I can say that it makes The Godfather look like sort of Frozen or something. I mean, it is ruthless. These people have no empathy. They have no normal human emotions. And I would say, yes, I saw very much the psychology of Putin, of how...
So what is their motivation? Is it a political doctrine or is it money?
No, I would say it's not. And I think I've seen a lot of political experts here talking about Putin and his legacy. I don't think it's that. I think he has narcissistic personality disorder, and it's much more about a bruised ego. It's very, very personal. And he sees his ego's diminished by the West, and he's just lashing out. And I don't think there's a long-term strategy, really.
Do you think he's surrounded by anyone with any scruples? I mean, the fear is that these oligarchs that he's surrounded himself with are motivated purely by money. I mean, the hope is someone like Abramovich, who's now being ostracised here in the UK, might actually be in some way able to broker peace because he's got this Jewish connection, which Zelensky has, and he might be able to get the ear of Putin. Do you think that's hoping too much of some of these oligarchs?
Well, I think that the oligarchs actually have far less power now than they used to. And in fact, around Putin, it's the Security Council, it's the generals, and they don't necessarily have this motivation of money. And they also don't forget that for them, sanctions can be very beneficial. You know, they have, a very then internalized population who are very dependent, and they are not so driven by money. They're again driven by the same paranoia, insecurity, pathetic syndrome of insecurity vis-à-vis the West. They've barely been to the West, and sort of bitter often and jealous, and that's what motivates them.
Now, when I was on my way home last night, I was delayed. I was out yesterday and I was delayed, and I was coming home quite late. So I get a phone call from Isabel who says, "You must go home and you must watch this programme tonight. It'll only take an hour, and it is your story.
and whatever.
I know what you're going to say.
And no, but quite on, it was late. It was late, and I had to get to bed.
And you fell asleep.
No, he didn't get to manage to sit.
No, it didn't get it. So tell us about the
Well, this is the Netflix programme, The Countess and the Billionaire, and this follows your extraordinary story of falling in love in what was quite clearly a love affair. And for anyone at home who might think that you married for money, we should stress at this point that you'd been married to an impoverished Cossack before, so clearly money isn't what turns you on. But this extraordinary story, and the long and the short of it is you're now estranged from your husband, but you've lived in fear with a man hanging around outside your house. You've had to move. You've seen the sinister side of the Putin regime.
Absolutely. And I see now, friends of mine writing to me from Russia, they're too scared to... and I also, don't forget, there are many, many brave people out there in Russia who are doing incredible things. So, giving up 15 years of their life to go to a protest and going to prison. This is real. And I have friends, they're too scared to write to me because they're scared it will be intercepted. This is very, very real. And we must have great compassion for those very, very brave people.
Alexandra, are you frightened for yourself?
No, I'm not frightened for myself. I feel like I'm just so lucky. I'm British. I was born in the UK. My children are British. And I think that, Putin has no grudge against me, and I'm, living my own thing. And I've been trolled very badly for speaking out against the invasion of the Ukraine, but I think it's really important that we all stand up.
Well, I want to talk about that trolling, because I follow you on social media, have done for some time, but you've been talking in the last few days about Russian bots pursuing you. Tell us about this, because we hear a lot about it. What's the reality of that?
So we hear a lot about bots, and I've actually done a bit of research that there are great laboratories of them all over Russia in different cities. They're paid for by the government. They are real people. They're not computers. And they have very set... they'll look for trigger words like Donbass, like Ukraine, and they'll just pump it out. And because it's so relentless, it's very, very overwhelming.
So what do they say? Is it nastiness that it sends, or is it countering the facts, questioning what you're saying?
So it's countering, but also very vicious and nasty, even saying my children were badly dressed.
Well, I can confirm that is not the case.
But then saying really, very personal things like, you're not Russian, you're a traitor, we hate you, we don't ever want to see you. I don't care, but what it makes you realise is, when we've read all these things about the interference in the Trump elections, they do exist, these trolls.
What we can't get any idea of is what support the Ukraine invasion has from within Russia, particularly Moscow. I bore Isabel silly. I was doing quite a lot of filming in Moscow 2 years ago.
I saw you did.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Did you like the programme?
I did, a lot.
At least you watched my programme. I didn't watch your
Well, you're going to.
But the thing was, we mixed with oligarchs, we mixed with ordinary people. And Alexandra, I have to say, within Moscow, I just met people who wanted to be Western.
Yeah,
they wanted to buy a BMW or a Jaguar or whatever it happens to be, and they wanted to have shopping malls and various things, all the just sort of things that most people in Britain would want as well. But we have no idea what they feel. Do they care about Ukraine? Would they have a war over Ukraine? Do they know what's happening in Ukraine in their name?
So I agree. I think it's very, very difficult. And I am directly tapped in. I'm talking to friends. I follow lots of different Russian accounts. I think it's very difficult to judge because obviously I would say there's different layers, that the sort of oligarchy, mini oligarchy, they're pretty self-indulgent and they don't want it because it's ruining their lifestyle. Then there's another layer who I'm very directly connected with, which is the Russian Orthodox Church, and it's a very devout, on the whole, population, and they are being fed the most horrific propaganda by their own patriarch, who is saying, he gave on Sunday, this Sunday, which is Forgiveness Sunday, the beginning of Lent, he gave a sermon, horrific, saying that fighting, he doesn't talk about Ukraine, he said the Donbass it's a crusade against the decadence of the liberal West, and specifically against gay parades. And deranged, illogical, not Christian. And as our, my children, we go to an Orthodox church here in London. My priest said the patriarch, he's like the president. He does not represent the people, and our priests here are not preaching this. But you can understand if you're devout and especially those who fought all the time through Soviet times to remain Christian, and they were so brave staying underground, to now then think, oh dear, well the church is actually wrong. It's really, really difficult.
We started by talking about the brutal tragedy that we're seeing in Ukraine, and obviously it is a different type of tragedy to the one we're seeing in Russia, but that's not to diminish the tragedy of the country that you love. And we started by talking about Leo Tolstoy. I grew up with, The War and the Peace and Anna Karenina.
Now they're calling it a special military operation and peace.
Yes, exactly. We can't call it that. So, you're seeing the culture that you love being erased, and I just wonder what you think is going to happen to Russia in the future, and what your hopes are and fears are for Russia.
Well, I don't think the culture will be diminished because it is so great and so universal. But I have spent I started going to Russia in 1992, and ever since I've lived many, many years there. It is a part of my everyday life, and I feel devastated, beyond devastated, that pretty likely I'll never go there again, that my children won't go there. I don't think it's good.
Why do you think you won't go there again?
I think that, we've seen these talks about peace offerings by Putin, but how do we go back now from what's happened? We don't just undo all these sanctions. We don't suddenly say, oh, he's a good guy and we can accept him. Unless there's a radical revolution, I don't really see how Russia is going to be a part of our world.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. I'm going home to watch Netflix.
You must.
I'm going to have a look at all of that.
I might rewatch it.
But Alexandra, thank you. It's just from our point of view to get insights and to get analysis of what's going on is vital. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely
very much for having me.
Yeah, that was Countess Alexandra Tolstoy.
We're going to hit the break there. More on Ukraine, top of the hour. Please stay with us.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukrainian President Zelensky will make an historic address to the House of Commons today from besieged Kyiv.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 8th of March. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
We are live right across the world. I hope you can join us at some stage on TV, on radio, online. Leading the news this morning.
President Zelensky will address MPs in the House of Commons today at 5 p.m. It comes as Ukraine's presidential office says civilian evacuations are underway.
The world is watching. The words of the Prime Minister ahead of his meeting with leaders of the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland and Slovakia, as his government comes under increasing pressure to grant safety to those fleeing Ukraine. We'll get the take of a GB News viewer.
We'll also be speaking to our reporter Paul Hawkins this hour. He's in Chelm near the Ukrainian border.
This bus for Poland or this bus for Germany? We're at a registration centre where Ukrainians are making some big life decisions.
And of course, it's International Women's Day.
It is International Women's Day. It is, and we are marketing very well on this morning.
We want to hear about the amazing women in your life.
Not in my life personally, but
I was trying to get him to give me a compliment.
Everybody. Yes, you're there, Isabel. You're there. You're number 47. No, listen, women in your life, females in your life.
Yeah, strong women, amazing women, selfless women, you name it.
Yeah. You name them, we'll name them. gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet at gbnews.
OK, our top story, and Ukraine's presidential office have said civilian evacuations are now currently underway in the city of Sumy.
Well, here in the UK, in an historic move, Ukraine's President Zelensky will make a live video address to the House of Commons this afternoon about the ongoing crisis.
Well, meanwhile, Poland has announced plans to set up a £1.3 billion fund to help Ukrainian refugees after receiving more than 1 million people.
Let's go and find out how those people are being handled. Paul Hawkins is on the Ukraine-Poland border with this one. And Paul, I don't know if things change every 24 hours or if they're getting worse or better. What can you tell us?
Well, in terms of the situation, I mean, Poland at the moment is coping. It is doing the best it can. The stream of refugees that come across the border, it gets bigger and then it gets smaller, and then there are quiet periods, and then there's suddenly a big influx coming across the border. And it's the same here at the Helm registration centre for the Ukrainian refugees, which is actually a converted sports hall. And that money you were talking about, that big announcement from the Polish government, it's for buses like this one that are going to Krakow. It's just pulled in, and inside the volunteers will be working out how many spaces they can allocate and how many families they can get on board. We're going to go inside and speak to a lady who she's not sure where to go, which country to pick. So we're going to have a word with her and her children about where they might be going. Olena. Dobry den, Olena. Olena, by the way, speaks some English, but we're going to do it in Ukrainian. We're going to find out how she's feeling in Ukrainian because it's much easier to do it that way. Olena, first of all, just tell us where you've come from.
I'm from Kiev.
You're from Kiev, and how is it in Kiev?
Зараз ситуація в Києві. Дуже складна ситуація, дуже неприємно там знаходитись, тому що весь час...
crazy because it's under the attack, we're under the stress. We was in danger. Because I cannot work in normal, for our children, my children, they impossible to study. Yes, we don't know what will be on the future. In the near future, it's why we don't know what is going on in the next few days. That's why we decided to leave the country.
And your partner is fighting now. Is been sent to fight.
Мій чоловік, він колишній воєнний, він вже на пенсії. Він залишився.
He's retired. My husband, he's retired. He's former, we work for Ministry of Defense, and now he's just helping the territorial defense. Because hopefully, yes, it's true, I will be calm. It will be good for me if I can. But now it's impossible, to pick him up and to go with him to abroad because this special regulation from 18 to 60. It's difficult and impossible for the male to leave the country now.
And you're not sure where you want to go? Spain, Luxembourg. Why Spain? Spain is very far away.
Перше, що я хочу, щоб було спокійно і в моїх дітей було нормальне майбутнє.
First of all, what I want a normal future for my children, follow the educational process as well. It's why we decided to country. I have the feeling that I lost my country and I don't know where I need to go. Now I am like the citizen of whole countries of the world, like cosmopolitan.
Would you ever consider coming to the UK?
А ви б хотіли б поїхати в Британію?
У мене таке відчуття, будто мене зрадили. Я не знаю, що мені робити далі.
I don't know what we need to do next. I wanted to see to show my children to never see such situation as now, because we had the power to leave the country and we don't know, actually we don't know where we can go, and we don't know the future, which country we go. That's why it's a pity, but but it was so bad feelings last night. It's the situation now.
And will you be able to? It's going to be difficult to find work if you don't speak the language and you're a child psychologist.
Буде важко знайти роботу по спеціальності як дитячий психолог, якщо ви не знаєте мови.
Ну я роботи не боюсь, труднощів я звик.
For me it's not a problem. I can work. Now I should learn the foreign languages for me.
Я вже готова до змін, бо це війна.
I'm prepared for changes because it's war. It destroyed me and myself. Yeah, it's why we can change something in our life.
There were worries about women being vulnerable outside Ukraine and children. Have you felt unsafe?
Я взагалі хотіла додати, що останнім часом я взагалі не відчувала, що в Україні є якийсь розвиток для дітей.
You know, unfortunately, the last years I observed the situation. It wasn't for our future of the children. It was a problem in country, you know, to make the good future, like in education as well in Ukraine. That's why. And now we are leaving the country. Even the English lessons in Ukrainian some schools is difficult because my children they didn't speak English at all, but they are like from 13 to 17 years old. Unfortunately, they didn't do well for Ukrainians, for Ukrainian children at all, the government. I mentioned the educational, Ministry of Education. Because they need to be motivated inside the country. They're fully motivated, but we don't know. The children cannot change, you know, to something. They cannot to decide by themselves where they need to go for the future or career.
Just very quickly, can we ask Marina? Marina, you're at school at the moment. Do you miss school?
Ти скучаєш за школою?
Трохи, так.
Yes, I miss my school.
Однокласники.
For my pupils from my form, I miss of my friends from school. Because it's difficult to change something. Because once you're, like, can imagine, you was in Ukraine and now you don't know where you can go. And you don't know when you can see your siblings, your friends.
Do you still have some friends in Ukraine, in Kiev? Are they okay?
І є ще тебе друзі, які залишились в Києві. Як вони себе почувають?
Так, в мене...
Yes. Some of my friends are still in Kiev. They said she will stay in Kiev. Now she's good. We don't know what's going next. And everyone is worried, is asking what is going on. Yeah, everyone. А куди ти хотіла поїхати?
Чесно, куди завгодно, щоб бути в безпеці.
Doesn't matter. I want to keep safe for my family. It's the country with everything will be okay for my family. Дякую.
Dякую. Thank you. There you go. So that's Marina, 17-year-old. Marina, her mum, Elena, and there was Elizabeth as well, who she just ducked out a shot there. You might have seen her. She didn't really want to be filmed. And they've also got a little brother as well, Marga, who's 13 years old. So, you know, that's the kind of decision-making process that we're looking at. In a very short space of time, you've got to pick a country to go to and work out how long you're going to be there, how you're going to survive, how you're going to overcome the language barrier. It's heartbreaking, and it's happening all the time, and it's only going to get worse.
Well, thanks very much indeed for making it real and bringing us real stories like that and just bringing everything to life and hitting home with that. Stay safe, and Thank you very much indeed.
OK, let's speak now to Major General Jonathan Shaw. He's a former British Army officer and expert in cybersecurity. Very good morning to you. Look, just in the last few moments, we're doing an interview with Countess Alexandra Tolstoy, a Russian aristocrat living here in the UK, talking about how she's been targeted by Russian bots for speaking out critically against the Kremlin. A small example of the kind of cyber warfare that's going on. But this goes all the way to the very top, doesn't it, where we're seeing ordinary Russians having Facebook and TikTok and the like being denied access to that. It's being weaponised, isn't it? Freedom of speech by the Kremlin?
Well, nothing new there. This is the information game. And all cyber is really a new tool. Well, it's not that new now. It's the latest tool to manipulate information and information flows. And given that wars are primarily fought in the mind, what the information that mind gets is absolutely key. So we should not be surprised by this. This is just a continuation of normal business, if you like, but accentuated.
So what do you see? What do you see, and how do you see the main danger from Russia at the moment to us?
Well, people. I mean, if you're still talking on the cyber theme, the danger is that we've all bought this idea that cyber is the latest war. I mean, you remember the debates between Tobias Ellwood and the Prime Minister about whether you needed tanks or not, and Boris Johnson was clearly saying that the cyber battlefield was the battlefield of the future. I think what this whole conflict is showing is that cyber, when it comes to wanting to take down a country and actually physically hold ground, actually traditional methods of warfare are the key, and that cyber plays very much a back supporting role. And like any intelligence asset, you have to know whether you're going to use it destructively or whether you're just going to use the information in the cyber to manipulate the situation. If you remember when the Russians took out Georgia way back in 2008, what they did was kept the cyber networks open, but spread disinformation to discourage, to de-incentivize, and to convince the local defenders that they were surrounded and the cause was hopeless. So they used it to manipulate the mindset rather than take it down. Many people are surprised, me too actually, at how little cyber seems to have played in this. But I think both those points therefore are true, that actually we're not seeing some of the cyber, the manipulation that's taking place, and equally that on an invasion like this of Ukraine, it's really all about heavy metal at the moment.
Jonathan Shaw, you're also a former director of the Special Forces. How much do you think this war will be played out between the Special Forces of the West and indeed of the Kremlin? I mean, we've seen, what would you call them, sort of FSB and the like going out on missions to try and take out President Zelensky, but we've also heard rumours about them being disaffected. We're also talking about the role of British Special Forces in going in and training, but also perhaps trying to do some missions within Ukraine. What more can you tell us about the level that this is played out at?
I've no idea, and you'll know full well that I can't really talk about that. I think I would say a peripheral, maybe crucial role from the FSB trying to kill Zelensky. That's clearly a key mission. And who knows? I have no idea. And I'm not even going to speculate on what British and American Special Forces might be doing. I'd put the emphasis more on the intelligence battle, on the other conflicts, the rest of the conflict. Sorry to be so vague.
No, but in your position as former head of cybersecurity at the MOD, what would be happening there now? Can they tell where the attacks are going to happen from, where they're likely to happen from? What sort of defence do we have, or is it just you just always have to be on a state of readiness?
So we're lucky in GCHQ. We've got one of the top tier, actually top 4 in the Premier League cyber capabilities. So I would hope we're as well prepared as we can be. What will they be doing? They will be looking to see where these attacks are coming from. There's a worry in cyberspace about mutually assured destruction, and no one ever knows in the cyber world what capabilities the other person has. And I think that's particularly true when you look at Russia, which has a strong state cyber capability, but where much of the really advanced capability is also held in their cyber criminals, and who knows what capabilities they have. So I think people I think they'll be very wary, they'll be very guarded, but they'll be feeling confident that they can handle most things. The weird thing is, if we look at these, one of the things we should really worry about is that Russia launches an attack on Ukraine, and unless they, and cyber weapons aren't that precise, as we've seen before. And the last time they launched an attack on Ukraine, there's a NotPetya attack in 2017, and what happened there was that it wasn't a very precise attack, and it had spillover, and it came out and took out various people like Maersk, the shipping company, and had big impacts all over the West. So you get these spillovers. So even if Russia is not deliberately attacking Britain, we risk spillover from an attack that isn't as precise as it was intended to be, because that's the nature of offensive cyber. It is not the magic weapon. It is not super precise. Unless you get absolutely right, you'll end up with spillover and causing uncalculated consequences. And that's a real danger.
Well, Major General, good to hear from you. Thanks for your analysis. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. With that, we hit the break, and we're going to be talking to Helen Hampton. Helen Hampton's an amazing woman. She's a GB News viewer. We got her on with the idea of your news, your views.
She went viral, didn't she, last time?
She did. She has a lot to say, and she's going to have more to say today. We're going to see her right after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We always love to hear from you. Sometimes you might want to hear what these viewers have to say. It's important to them. Their views become our news today. And someone who appeared in the programme before, as Isabel said, went viral, of course, was choir organiser Helen Hampton. So she's from Croydon. Helen, good to see you again.
Hello. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Well, Helen, you know how this goes. We talk to you and you get it off your chest. What would you like to relieve yourself of?
Well, I think, obviously, listening to today's programme and what's happening in the world, there is really only one subject on people's minds, and that is Ukraine. And I think that we are all, anybody who doesn't feel heartbroken and deeply affected by what's unfolding in a country on the other side of Europe would be very heartless. I mean, we are in a terrible situation where we have lived in relative peace, and certainly, in Europe, for so long that I think people have forgotten really what it's like. And I know we saw this, I remember the scenes on the sort of Macedonia border back in the late 90s and things. But this is just it's truly shocking. And I don't think anybody here can really understand what it is that Putin is doing or what he's trying to achieve. I mean, there are lots of people on social media saying the man is mad. I'm not so sure he's mad, but I think his ideology is very, very different to ours. And you've had lots of wonderful commentators on GBNews, and I would congratulate you for that over the last 10 days, with real expertise and insight into the Russian point of view, as well as what's happening on the ground. And your reporters out there now talking to the refugees. I mean, it is heartbreaking and harrowing. And I would say also that, anybody who's seen footage from other media channels, and I would recommend actually for those who can't quite get to scale of it, there's a terrible video that was shot by some Sky News reporters who were basically ambushed, and how they survived, I don't know. But it's the full sort of harrowing 8 minutes is on Twitter certainly, and
we know those people who were involved in that, so it really is scary, really, really scary.
Yeah, Stuart Ramsey, an old colleague of ours, and as you say, how he survived, an absolute miracle, Helen, that bullet going through his thigh and coming out the bottom of his back and just missing his kidney.
If people listen to it, it's the reality of the velocity and the power and the sound of the gunshots. It's terrifying. And I think that when I saw that, it really drives it home to you that the horror of this war. And, people like this brave young woman, and then obviously the Ukrainians have been unbelievable. Their resolve, their bravery, both the people who've taken up arms and the people who are there trying to keep the infrastructure going and trying to help those who are in need. Anastasia...
with a problem. It leaves us with a problem. You see that shooting and you obviously totally understand why people would want to and should flee. But where should they go, and should we be doing more?
Well, my feeling is this. I mean, everybody, from people here to definitely the people in Ukraine, just want this to stop. We want Putin got rid of and gone, and that is a really complex, obviously, problem for the Western world because, of the nuclear issue and all the rest of it and his unpredictability. But it is early days, and we have to hope that this will be over sooner rather than later. And my own feeling is this: we're very quick to say we should bring people here, and I unreservedly would welcome Ukrainian refugees if it is the best thing for them. Right now, what they need is safety, and they need to sort of get over the immediate trauma. I'm not sure that all these people are looking for a new life somewhere else. I think what they need now is refuge. If we can provide temporary refuge, that's great. If there are family members who have, people in Ukraine they want to bring here, that's perfect, because family wants to look after family. But what I do feel is this sort of knee-jerk, we must bring everybody here, we're not doing enough, we need to take this many thousands. It's not about numbers, it's really what's best for these people. And I think they want to stay close by because they still have family, and their whole lives are still back in Ukraine. Some of them may be dashed into rubble by now, but that is where they come from, that is their life. And I do not understand this sort of this constant narrative of we're not doing enough, we must bring these people here. There are countries that are closer where we can, as we already have done, we've pledged, I believe, £175 million to help refugees sort of in situ in neighbouring countries.
We got it. We're obviously confined by time restraints, Helen. So, believe it or not. But listen, thank you for your views. People will let us know if they agree or don't agree at GB News, and that's how Helen got in touch with us. She is Helen Hampton. She is a friend of the programme. She's from Croydon.
We'll have her back
and she
again.
has great choirs. Helen, thanks. Speak again sometime. Thank you very much indeed.
We've got to go. That's it for us this morning. Up next, Tom Harwood has his show, The Briefing, and we'll be back bright and early at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Before that, though, here's your forecast.
Good morning. Another chilly start out there. It will turn milder as we go through the next few days. A brisk wind, though, making it feel even colder, despite a fair bit of sunshine, certainly in the east. But further west, this weather front is slowly approaching, and that will increase the cloud and eventually bring some showers. For the time being, though, high pressure is still controlling things, and that will bring most places a dry, fine day. A touch of frost out there this morning, but plenty of sunshine across the Midlands, eastern England and most of Scotland. Across Wales, southwest England, Northern Ireland, we are seeing the clouds steadily increase, and here a few showers just trickling into Devon, Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and across much of Northern Ireland during the afternoon. The breeze will be pretty noticeable, but it is slowly bringing milder air. So temperatures up to double figures across the Midlands and Wales, southwest England, 8 or 9 in Belfast, and only 8 or 9 in the eastern parts of England, despite a fair bit of sunshine. There will be that noticeable wind also. We'll see some of that rain edging across Scotland through this evening, so turning damp for a time, but it does tend to clear away before the next area of rain edges into Northern Ireland and western Scotland during the early hours. Temperatures won't be anything like as low as the night just gone. We're generally well above freezing thanks to more cloud and that brisk wind. It will make for a different feel, certainly on Wednesday morning. It won't feel anything like as cold, but again, for most of England and Wales, Wednesday's dry and bright. A wet day, though, for parts of Northern Ireland, western Scotland. This line of rain, it's a weather front, it's just not moving very far. Some of that rain could be heavy as well. Eventually it trickles into West Wales, southwest England, but for most of England, Wales, eastern Scotland, tomorrow is another dry day where we see some hazy sunshine. In the east, we could easily get into the teens, and temperatures ticking up further as we go through the week. We'll see some patchy rain, particularly in the west on Friday, but a lot of dry weather in the east, but often quite windy. As I said, those temperatures starting to tick up, especially in the south.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.